Welcome to Council Meeting 4505. I'll ask you all to be upstanding for the Acknowledgement of Country and the prayer. I'd like to show my respect and acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land of elders past, present and emerging on which this meeting takes place.
We thank you, Lord, for the honour of being called by our fellow citizens to this office of honour and trust. Give us grace, diligently and honourably, free from private interest or prejudice, to discharge the duties entrusted to us, to the common good and as in your sight. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
There are no apologies for today's meeting. I'll ask for declarations of interest. I'll be declaring a non-significant, non-pecuniary interest on item 4.3. So I'll be asking the Deputy Mayor to take the chair for that item, and then I'll be coming back in. Any other declarations of interest? Being none, I'll move on to the confirmation of minutes of ordinary meeting 4504 held 21st February 2022. Councillor Williams, moved. Seconded Councillor Prieston. Any discussion? No. All those in favour?
I've just got a question about the minutes, if I may. Yes. We had a speaker who addressed us regarding the special rate variation.
Yes.
And there was obviously no outcome from that. I'm very conscious that we have to make a decision about the rate variation before the 30th of June. Mm-hmm. And I'm also conscious that there was some difference of opinion about rate variations amongst some of the councillors on the previous term of council. I'm concerned, frankly, that we're approaching a decision about the rate variation and we're still not aware of an alternative strategy to a rate variation. Now, as I see it, quite frankly, the position of yourself and your fellow Liberal councillors is against a rate variation, as was said in the election campaign and pointed out to us by the speaker at the last meeting. And then there were three other councillors who were here that voted for the rate variation. So that means we're looking at a 3-3 vote, which means I'm the one that's going to have to decide which way it goes. And therefore, I want to know what the alternative strategy is to the rate variation. When are we going to find that out?
Fine, councillor. If I could, I clarified my position to the special rate variation that was considered last term, that was put on public exhibition. Comments came in that my thoughts at the time, and especially during the lead up to the election campaign, was that a lot of different strategies need to be put in place. One of them involves the deferred property strategy. They all form part of our long-term financial plan. The special rate variation that has gone to public exhibition, that will come back to council for ratification, was, in my view, a decision of the previous council. I am generally not a proponent of increasing rates, but that will form part of the mix of how we assess council's finances going into this term and in the view of the long-term financial plan.
So are we going to see an alternative strategy?
It's not an alternative strategy. It's the special rate variation was put to council. It was adopted by council. It went to IPART. IPART will find its recommendations and that will be brought back to Huntersville Council for ratification.
Correctly. So ultimately we have to vote on a rate variation.
Ultimately, the rate variation's been applied for already. The decision has been made by council to apply for that rate variation, and IPART will make a decision as to whether or not that is granted. I would see it as a functionary of council that once IPART has made a decision one way or another, that we accept that decision.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, would you like me to add to that?
If you could.
What's the alternative? The alternative is we don't do infrastructure work. It's as simple as that. IPART will give us an answer late, sometime May probably, I think. Maria might correct me, but and we'll bring that report back to council. with what that answer is. And if it's a no, then we'll have to give you a list of things that won't be happening in the next financial year. There's no alternative. Unless you wish to run a deficit budget.
No, I understand that, but my question is, there was an alternative proposal so that the rate variation wouldn't have to take place, is my understanding.
I don't think that is. I think your understanding is incorrect. I'm not sure. I'm not aware. Apart from the concurrent property strategy and other efficiencies that were being driven last term, I don't think that there was a proposal for an alternative to the rate variation other than considering borrowings. But that what, as per the decision of the last council, was a process that never took place. No alternatives were voted. The consideration of alternatives to the rate increase through IPART was something that the previous council did not consider.
Right, but if you vote against a rate increase, what's the alternative?
But the council didn't vote against.
No. But there's a possibility. There's a possibility based on the position that you have taken and your fellow.
I can. If you would like me to clarify mine. Yep. If you'd like me to clarify my position, Councillor.
Mr. Mayor, I object to the broad brush classification of my position on this issue. It was a decision for the previous council whether or not to adopt an alternate strategy or apply for the special rate variation. That decision was made on the basis of the information available to council at the time. The election material, I'm sure, probably said that was the wrong decision to make, but it didn't say what the position would be of myself 6 months later. So to the extent that it comes to a decision, it's a decision I'll make on the basis of the information currently available to us. So I wanted to make that point clear and request that any characterisation of my position not be based on what a council did 6 months ago.
I won't get into argy-bargy now, but it's based on a position that was taken in the election campaign by a collective group of councillors. That's what it's based on.
Councillor Quinn, could I just clarify that I don't think anyone in the council campaign said that they would reverse the IPART decision.
Correct.
And that's certainly something I never said during the council campaign. I said that I objected strongly to a permanent increase to rates, which I said with great efficacy. But I don't think you can point to a reversal of the previous council's resolution, if that assists.
Yes. When it comes to council,
yes.
that's when we'll know.
Yes.
So,
Councillor Sanderson.
thank you for the clarification.
If I could, Mr. Mayor, my recollection at the time that we voted on the IPART is that that was a notice of intention to apply. Still a matter for the take up that village. There is still a decision from this council being made. I believe Councillor Quinn is correct in that.
And the decision will be made at the time that it comes to council on the basis of the information and options available to council at that time.
Agreed.
Councillors, any other discussion about the minutes? No. I'll move on to, there are a couple of late items. There are 2 Merrill minutes that I have put forward. The first is a Merrill minute regarding item 2.1, regarding the retirement of Father Kevin Bates. I'll just read the recommendation before I put it. Father Kevin Bates was ordained as a Morris priest in Melbourne in 1972. His 50 years of service taken from all around Australia, working in schools and parish communities within the Catholic Church. In February 2008, Father Bates began his term as the parish priest of Holy Name of Mary Parish. His devoted service to the community and his kind of compassionate leadership has forged strong connections with our community. Music making and songwriting have been an important part of his ministry, and in 2019, Father Bates received the Medal of the Order of Australia for service to the Catholic Church. Council would like to thank Father Bates for his hard work and dedication to the community and wish him well in his retirement from active ministry. Got a seconder? Councillor Quinn. Any other discussion? No, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Against? That is carried. Item 2.2, councillors, is support for flood affected communities. Obviously, the last fortnight and beyond has been a pretty harrowing time for communities, particularly in northern New South Wales, but in the Hawkesbury Nepean. And I just thought I'd put this to council to demonstrate to the community where they could offer their support. I will read the report. Communities across northern New South Wales, outer Sydney and Queensland have been affected by catastrophic flood events in recent weeks. Lives were lost. Tens of thousands of homes were damaged by floodwaters and more than 1 million people were affected. The Australian Red Cross has reported. Our thoughts are with those who lost loved ones and many of those whose lives have been changed forever. These communities are working through the daunting task of cleaning up the damage caused by these historic floods. As a council, we express our sympathy and support to these communities. Where possible, we will support federal and state government initiatives designed to assist flood-affected communities. New South Wales Government information on how to donate responsibly to flood-affected communities through the donation of goods or financial support has been shared through Council's website, social media and email newsletter. We also thank and acknowledge the efforts of those within our community, particularly Hunters Hill SES, who have demonstrated a willingness to help through donations and other support. Do I have a second to that motion? Councillor Crassoy, any discussion? Councillor Crassoy.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I wonder if you'd consider adding to your recommendation that council write to our Friendship Pact Council, Richmond Valley.
Happy to.
And express our sympathies and offer our friendship
assistance.
And assistance in any way.
The wording. Correct. Yeah. Yes, happy to, Councillor. Would you like to speak to that?
Just momentarily, thank you. Just that when the bushfires happened a couple of years ago, as a council, we just quite spontaneously, because again it was such a devastating thing, and it's so hard to know how to respond to it in a quick way. And while all the adults are equally as devastated as the children, we're all running around trying to find ways to fund and support the rebuild. And meanwhile, the children have lost their schools, their homes, their toys, their everything. And just a simple gesture was that we worked with Hunters Hill Primary School at the time, and some of the students wrote letters and did colourful pictures and told the children up in the valley, you know, how we felt for them and how sad we felt for them and what we hoped for them. And those children then, in their everyday grind of seeing bushfires mopped up around them, wrote back to our children. And for our children, it was an opportunity for us to see firsthand what those young people were going through. And it's such a simple and really tiny gesture, but for little people, I think it was very special. It meant a lot to the children in the Richmond Valley, and it meant a lot to our primary school students. So if there's anything small we can do in that way from kid to kid, I would really endorse it to you, Mr. Mayor, to reach out to our local primary schools, perhaps.
Happy to look into that.
Thank you.
Councillors, any other speakers for? Councillor Williams.
Speaking in support of the motion and the addition which the Deputy Mayor has added. When this was unfolding, I was at the local government conference on the mornings when the news of the flood was coming through, and those councillors that were able to make the conference from those areas were able to articulate during the networking sessions and during the devastation and the absolute trauma that people were experiencing up there. And it was a theme from there on in the conference of the power of local government and the need for local government to step in and rebuild their communities. And it was amazing to be part of that community of councillors and councils that were all motivating and mobilising themselves to address these issues within their communities. So it just shows the strength and power of local government and the importance of local government at that grassroots level of how life impacts on our communities. So I just thought I'd share those thoughts.
Along that same vein, Councillor Williams, I did have the opportunity, because we were at that conference, to sideline the Mayor of the Hills, Peter Gangemi, and get him to open up the Castle Hill Showgrounds for affected equestrian communities coming out of the Hawkesbury and the Pean areas. In stark contrast, I got in contact with the International Equestrian Centre at Horsley Park, which is a state government run facility, who cited to me insurance issues as to why they couldn't open up a 400 stable facility. So it's that was, again, a demonstration of councils being leading, especially in these disaster situations. Councillors, any other speakers for? I assume none against. I'll put to a vote. Those in favour, against, carried. I will move to item 3.1, notices of motion. We have a number of speakers to item 3.1. So I'll invite Maureen Ball. I believe this is being read out. Linda? Yes. It's being read out. Yeah. General Manager, do you want to read out the item? Is it in front of you?
I need to get it on the screen. Sorry, I haven't.
Perhaps I'll pass to Stuart. That's a bigger version.
Stuart, you might be quicker. Sorry.
Yep, no worries. Thank you. My name is Maureen Ball, a resident of Henley. I've asked for my comments to be read out at the council meeting 4505 on the 21st of March 2022. Item number 3.1, Gladesville Reserve. Item 1. I would like to agree with council recommendation that Gladesville Reserve should not be upgraded to include any synthetic materials and instead address remediation, well-designed drainage system, stormwater collection, levelling and installation of the best suited natural turf. Item 2, I think, actually refers to the plan of management. So.
Okay.
That's right.
I'll call Mr. Paul Mahoney. You have 3 minutes.
I'll take less time. My name is Paul Mahoney. I'm a Henley resident and a member of Sustaining Gladesville Reserve. I'm here to support the notice of motion to exclude synthetic fields from consideration for the upgraded Gladesville Reserve. Council has a stated objective of preserving and maintaining the unique natural environment and heritage of the local area. Council has adopted a declaration of a climate emergency and endorsed a sustainability action plan. Council has also indicated that it will work to address minimising waste and adopt urban heat mitigation practices. Synthetic fields create heat islands, leach microplastics into the environment, are more expensive and result in landfill. Installing a synthetic playing field is inconsistent with the declaration of a climate emergency and sustainability practices endorsed by Council. I therefore support the upgrade of Gladesville Reserve using a natural turf playing surface. I also support deferring the adoption of the plan of management for the Henley Precinct to allow further consultation. And I further support a further community meeting to follow on from the facilitated forum of 22 February to discuss Gladesville Reserve and explore all the requirements and available options.
Councillors, any questions? Speaker? Councillor Sanderson.
Yes, I believe in the Banning Gladesville's reserve submission. I read there was discussion about removing reference to the artificial turf. I believe that's already happened in the plan of management, which is a later issue. Are you satisfied with that, or do you believe the approach of complete prohibition, I'm sorry, is the more appropriate stance?
Well, I think the notice of motion, I think that says the installation of turf that includes synthetic material. So only local reserve, Simone, is against the installation of plastic playing field as a whole. But I think we're open to synthetic cricket pitches, for example, in find areas.
I think important.
Sorry, you'll have an opportunity to address, so I can't interject. Councillors, any other questions? Sorry, Simone, you can come up now. Sorry.
I thought I
have to keep it ruly.
Thank you. So my name is Simone Contra. I'm the president of Sustaining Gladesville Reserve. And first and foremost, I'd really like to thank Council for the workshop that we had on the 22nd of February. That was really well received, and we're very happy with the discussion that we were able to have at that workshop. So thank you. Before I speak through what I was going to say, I would just make the comment that I was going to make previously in relation to your question. And so essentially the stance of Sustaining Gladesville Reserve is that we don't understand how synthetic turf could ever be an acceptable solution at Gladesville Reserve because of all of Council's governance documents that cover that. And it's not just the plan of management, there's a whole raft of other governance documents that really preclude a synthetic surface. So in relation to item 3.1, Sustaining Gladesville Reserve strongly supports the notice of motion, including all 6 of the recommendations. And in addition, we just wish to reiterate that, and we've asked for this several times previously, but that a needs analysis must be prepared and that it should be the foundation of any changes to Gladesville Reserve, but particularly any increase in size or anything like that. Otherwise, how could we understand and how could Council understand what actually needs to be done? How can you create a solution without actually understanding what the need is? And a needs analysis should be overseen by the newly formed Sport and Recreation Committee. We're also really pleased to hear that that committee is being formed. We think that's a very important governance component for sport and recreation in the municipality. Also wish to request that Council considers holistic solutions that offer value for money for ratepayers and promote community. So for example, and what I mean by that is sports clubs sharing the use of school sport fields and doing joint ventures to potentially fund upgrades for lighting to allow nighttime use of school sport fields by community groups. I understand that there have been other examples of councils doing these kind of joint ventures, and we think that there can be really good mutual benefit for school infrastructure as well as community groups. And not only does that enhance the benefit for the whole community, but it's also a very good value for money solution. Encourage you to look into that. Thank you.
Could you just hold on to see if any councillors have any questions? Councillors, Councillor Vergara.
You're aware that the plan of management for Gladesville Reserve includes the aim of balancing the natural environment with active recreation. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. Active and passive.
Yeah. So to the extent that there is an obligation or an aim to balance recreation, then it's not inconsistent to consider synthetic turf.
No, there's a whole raft of other reasons. So you're referring to one specific thing. There are a whole raft of other governance documents and other clauses within that plan of management as well, including the Crown Lands Act, which is very specific about I'm not going to use the exact words, so please forgive me. I don't have a photographic memory. But the intent is to preserve and enhance all the environmental aspects of Gladesville Reserve, including, the biodiversity, so trees, plants, animals, and the soil, and it's specific about that.
The plan of management doesn't refer to the Crown Lands Act. Leave that aside. And then in terms of the needs analysis, you're also aware that in 2017, the Northern Sydney Regional Organisation of Councils did an extensive study on sports ground strategy, and they reported on the needs of the 7 council areas, which I remember of the organisation.
Mm-hmm.
And you're aware of the report findings?
So when that report was done, and actually even now, the Gladesville Reserve level playing field area is classified as a park. So I don't believe that report would be relevant at all to Gladesville Reserve.
In terms of the needs of the community and the sporting organisations.
That's what we're asking for. Is that a clear description of what the needs are?
That's what that report considered. And it found that by 2023, not far away, there'd be a 26% deficit in the needs of a community like Hunters Hill for playing fields.
Hunters Hill
availability.
has, and I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, but I have never, when I've attended a council meeting, been personally questioned and probed like this by one of the councillors. So I'm just saying I find this a little bit unusual, this questioning.
Concha, the councillors, when you address council, have the opportunity to ask questions of yourself or anyone who addresses council. I'll ask that it's kept civil, but you know,
I apologise.
there's nothing that I think
And
was
so
uncivil.
what we're requesting is a needs analysis for our community.
Specific.
Yes.
I just wanted to understand the information that was forming your view, and if you'd considered that the Northern Sydney Organisation for Regional Health had considered the needs of the 7 members.
I understand that. And
Thank you.
I understand that our council area is responsible to its ratepayers and our community first and foremost before it has responsibility for a whole region. And I don't believe that NESROC report was specific to our municipality. It is a general report.
Councillors, any other questions? Councillor Crassoy?
Oh, just a point of clarification on that, Mr. Mayor. I'm just scrolling through because I didn't want to question it without being sure, but it does say the legislative framework for the plan of management falls under the Crown Land Management. Just in answer to that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's just in the report we got.
Yes. Councillors, any other questions, clarifications? Thank you, Ms. Concha.
Thank you.
Want to ask,
Oh,
sorry,
Councillor.
apologies, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Concha, you had emailed all of the council, I think, after that community meeting, and in it you actually did link some relevant documents with some comments, and I wondered if you would consider tabling that for us to be included with your submission for council, just so that people can refer to some of the questions that have been asked here. So.
Absolutely. And my comments this evening have also been emailed, so I'm happy for that to be tabled as well.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Concha. We have another speaker via Zoom, Mr. Ewan McLeod.
Hi, how you doing? Can you hear me? Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Awesome. So first of all, I just want to say again, thank you for the kind of community consultation session down at Henley Reserve. And from All Saints perspective, we welcome the report on Gladesville Reserve. The club supports the report's conclusion around the concept plan being prepared, which includes the 1.5 fields with upgraded playing surface, which also includes the idea of grass, subsoil, irrigation and drainage, the relocation of the cricket nets and the potential repositioning of new amenities. So the club believes that this outcome represents a compromise that will meet the club's objectives while responding constructively to concerns expressed by the broader community in relation to synthetic surfaces. The club also notes that in the report, the timeline is proposed in the report, but we remain concerned that even with the shorter of the 2 timeframes, this will result in over 4 years passing between the offer of the grant and the much needed improved facilities for use. So in particular to 3.1, now I know I've been speaking to a couple of the councillors today and emailed all the councillors yesterday. Just wanted just to confirm that within motion 1, that the efforts directed towards the that just make sure that does include considering the 1.5 fields, and it does include the any upgrading playing surfaces and amenities. So just as it was currently written, I think it was silent on that. Essentially, these are essential to meet the club's objectives and the objectives of the grant, which are set out in the deed of funding. And then in terms of kind of the motion items 2 to 6 inclusive, again, we are I'd say kind of agnostic to them, but our key concern is we don't want any of them to delay further the implementation timelines proposed. So if the plan of management needs to be revisited, we just want to really understand the impacts of that. Would that put a further pressure on the timeline? Does that put the grant at risk? All that kind of stuff. So I'll stop there, and happy to either take any questions or get some clarification.
Thank you, Ewan. Councillors, any questions?
Yeah, just a clarification, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. McEwen. So the 1.5 proposal is mentioned elsewhere in another report, not in 3.1. So just to be clear about that, what we're dealing with in 3.1 is explicitly the synthetic surface being taken out of consideration. The 1.5 fields proposal is elsewhere in another report that Mr. Dutton's done that needed to be further explored.
Just on that point, councillors, I do just want to get the staff's view. Point 1 is fine, as it doesn't conflict with the report that's being brought later. Deferring the adoption of the draft Henley Precinct Open Space Plan of Management, is that going to affect, to you, Stuart, is that going to affect the grant application process at all? Does this, would anything in this notice of motion stand in the way of the item at where are we? 4.1 being considered and carried, if it was the view of council?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's, the biggest risk would be that one of our key milestones was that the plan of management be adopted. That's the key milestone for the grant, and that was due to be done June last year. So we are getting quite a bit of pressure, but how the department would see it, I can't answer that. I know I spoke to them only a couple of weeks ago, and they were putting a lot of pressure on to get things moving, but they haven't said no, the grant will be taken off you or anything like that. They said we are falling into the at-risk category.
If I may then, Mr. Mayor, and I totally understand what Mr. Dutton's saying there, so perhaps either Mr. Dutton or the General Manager online. My understanding, my concern with the plan of management being adopted in its current form is that it doesn't contain the functional area for the relocated amenities facility, for example, if the 1.5 proceeds. And I'm just not sure, what's going to take longer. If we adopt a plan of management now and then have to amend it in 3 months' time because, ultimately the community decides to go with the 1.5 fields, and therefore that 1.5 fields encroaches on the current amenities block, we've then got to move the amenities block, and therefore we've got to start a whole amendment of the plan of management. That's the piece that I'm just a little bit concerned about. And I'm just wondering if either the General Manager or Mr. Dutton can clarify with us whether that change can take place without having to review, revise and go through the whole process of reviewing the plan of management.
So I'll hand over to Mr. Dutton, who I think covers that in the report later on, and then maybe to the Acting General Manager to
thanks, Mr. Mayor.
maybe give a bit of a little bit of a view about the grant application itself and its retention.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I might, if I may, just ask Ms. Butler, who's in the crowd and has been involved with these, just to comment on the process of whether we would have to restart the process with the amenities block.
It would depend on whether the changes to the plan of management are significant. So if it involves moving the categorisation areas and readjusting the boundary, yes, that would mean a new plan of management. So it means getting Crown Land approval, doing the public exhibition and that process again.
So in simple terms, if we move the amenities block from where it is now and move it as All Saints are proposing towards the halfway line on the northern boundary of the field, would that be regarded as a substantial
No, it would still be in the same area categorised as sports ground. So it's an amenity block for the sports use. So it would be an appropriate category to be in sports ground.
That's good to know. So we therefore don't have to do a whole revision of the for that functionality. Good to know. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Acting General Manager, if I could ask you to make a comment.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. And just to confirm that, the plan of management, if adopted tonight, gives us the flexibility to deal with the various options that we've been presented with. I probably am not as I think we're seriously under threat in relation to this grant if we don't get on with it. And the reason I say that is really from the political point of view. We've got a state election next year. And if we don't be seen to be spending this money, I'm sure it's going to be reallocated somewhere else. And that's reality. So we need to get on with it. The plans of management allow us to work with the 1.5 and the relocation. And it also allows us to continue to work with the community if we adopt that process to make sure we get it right along the way. We're not drawing a line in the sand tonight with our recommendations later in the report, in the meeting. What we're saying is, this is the way forward. Keep consulting with the community and get on with it. It's clear from the NESROC study the needs for additional playing fields within Northern Sydney. Our people go and play elsewhere. People from Northern Sydney come and play in Hunters Hill. It has to be seen that we can't satisfy our own community's needs just with our own areas. So it had to be done on a regional basis. Gladesville Reserve is just one of those areas where we can help meet the needs for the whole region, but also the people of Hunters Hill. And also, we will continue to work with the schools in relation to joint use. They're very difficult to deal with. I'll be quite upfront. We've tried in the past, but we'll continue to try and work through those issues. We do create other issues when we do start to do that in relation to traffic and parking. So, it's not as simple as just saying, let's go and use Gladesville High School's oval. We've got to make sure we satisfy and can deal with all the other issues along the way as well. So, but we will work through that. I've done it, we've done it elsewhere in other council areas, as one of the speakers mentioned, and it can happen again. But that's only icing on the cake. That's not going to resolve our other problems.
Thank you, Acting General Manager. That being said, I'll call on the mover of the motion, Councillor Crassoy.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. If I could first thank you for that feedback, and that's what I had really been waiting on to hear about item 2. And if I could ask if you and my seconder would indulge me to remove item 2 from this notice of motion.
Councillor Quinn.
I'm okay with that. Given the information that we've been provided with the officer, I'm greatly concerned, as the General Manager and you have suggested, that this funding might be threatened in the next 12 months. We do want this project to proceed, so I'm okay with that, with the surety that there is flexibility.
Yep. Councillor.
The only reason it was there was to make sure we had that flexibility. And also on item 6, just for the sake of it not getting in the way of anything or costing council, that we just amend those words to say that council work with the Sustainability Advisory Committee to investigate policy of climate first, etc.
Could I just get that pulled up on screen just for absolute clarity? Would you like to talk to your motion?
I will, just briefly. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, the reason for bringing this motion, it really came off the back of the facilitated consultation session that we had down at Henley, and at the end of that, Ewan came up to, I think it was yourself and me, and said, look, there's that outstanding motion that's still with council, that we get an expert advice about a synthetic playing field and about a natural playing field. And certainly the feeling that I think everyone came away from that meeting with, but actually in the lead up to that meeting, was that synthetic was going off the table. And actually it was the president of the club who said, can we please not spend any more time or money investigating a synthetic field? Now, with an outstanding resolution of council, that had to be therefore tidied up. So that's why I went home that night and thought about how we could do that as a council to get synthetic off the table so that we can keep moving forward with the outcome that the soccer club want and that the council and the community want. So it wasn't intended to get anyone worked up. It was just really intended to free up the council staff and to say that's no longer happening and this is the direction we want to go. Item 2 about deferring the plan, which has now been removed, was simply because I had a fear that if we had the plan of management endorsed and then in whatever the council leadership came back to us with, we then had to go back to the table on the plan of management. I just had a fear that it could put us 6 months down the track. So, but now you've given me that reassurance that that's not going to happen. I don't mind that that's not there. Reviewing the plan of management to prohibit the use of synthetic turf you've already done, apart from on cricket nets. So that advice was taken on board. And just for the information of anyone who read the business paper, I sent this to the general manager nearly a month ago so that he had the heads up that this is kind of the motion I was thinking to bring. And as you can see reflected in the report, he's mentioned a few times that feedback's already been taken on board and they have removed the references to synthetic in the plan of management for that reason. Facilitating a further public meeting, I was inclined to suggest that we actually just move to further consultation and engagement with the community. But I do think from the feedback I've had today in response to this notice of motion in the business paper that the community would really like that opportunity to participate in that. And refer consideration of the sporting needs to the Sport and Recreation Advisory Committee. I would love for us to have the time to not be doing all of this without consulting them, because that's the reason we create these committees, is to seek their expert advice and opinion. But for all the reasons that everyone's already explained tonight, we want to keep moving. So when you're faced with a crisis or an opportunity, what you try to do is address what's in front of you, which is what I'm hoping this motion will allow the council leadership to do, but also look at what's caused this situation to be where it is and how do we mitigate against that in the future. So while I'm all for pursuing the advice and recommendation of the council leadership, and if that's 1.5 fields and a moving of the clubhouse, I'm happy to look at that when it comes to us. I'm happy to look at 1 field and 2 little fields and a clubhouse to the northwest. I don't mind really, because that's the council leadership's job. So I specifically didn't want to just say 1.5 fields, because I want the council leadership, with the expert advice they seek, to actually go down the path they need to go down without having to come back to council again and say 1.5 fields isn't going to work, so what are we going to do now? Because we don't know if 1.5 fields will work. We don't know what Transport for New South Wales will say about us pushing it further to the northeast, and we don't know what the soccer code will say about us not having large enough setbacks around the boundary. We just don't know enough to lock us in again, and I don't want to lock us in again, because look what's happened with the last year. Of course, no one knew that COVID was going to happen. No one knew that the then Planning Minister Rob Stokes' report was going to take as long as it took, and that the election was going to get pushed back and it was all going to turn into an election material matter. But no one knew any of that. But we do still need to just now keep moving. So I hope that this motion releases council from any obligation to now get expert reports into synthetic fields, and frees them up to come back with a really good plan in consultation with the community and the soccer club, when we can keep moving forward. And that's what I'd really just like us to be able to do tonight.
Thank you, councillor. Any speakers against?
Oh, not yet. But can I ask clarification?
Yes. Councillor Vergara.
Recommendation number 3, it says to revise the plan of management to prohibit the use of synthetic turf. Has that been done now, or just have the references to synthetic been removed? So it's
through
different between a prohibition and silence.
to you, I think, Stuart.
Yeah, through Mr. Mayor, they've just been removed. The only reference to synthetic would be in the back of the report where there's minutes of public meetings, etc., where it was raised. It hasn't been specifically prohibited, as I understand.
Then I would speak against number 0.3 on the basis that it locks in. It's a predetermined decision. Good decision making means council should consider whatever is available at the time. An option was developed tomorrow that was a carbon sink and it was synthetic. That changes the equation. So while I'm not for synthetic, I think as a matter of good decision making, we need to be free of bias, free of predetermined positions, and free to make decisions on the basis of information at the time, including as technology advances and circumstances change. So I would not support a prohibition of an option which may in 3, 4, 5 years' time be viable.
Would it help to, would you like to make an
Councillor
amendment?
Sorry.
If you'd like to propose an amendment for item 3 to say to remove reference to synthetic turf. Review and revise the Henley Precinct Open Space Plan of Management to remove reference to the use of synthetic turf in Gladesville Reserve. Would you like to?
Motion?
Yeah,
Yes. Amend motion.
I'm happy to
Happy
take
to-
it into the.
Councillor Quinn, second it, yes.
Again, let's get this correct. Is that right?
Councillor Cresswell? Yep. Councillors, any other speakers for the motion? Councillor Quinn?
Yeah, I'll speak for it, Mr. Mayor. Look, I think we want this project, we want Gladesville Reserve fixed and upgraded with as a matter of priority. And I think we can now set aside an item that's going to take quite a bit of council staff's time to research further, and we can now get more focused on delivering a high quality natural playing surface at Gladesville Reserve. I'm less concerned about the matter that Councillor Vergara raised, because I know you can revise a plan of management, 5 years' time, and it will be due for that in 5 years' time anyway. But I think this now provides us with a way forward. Hopefully it also provides us with a little bit more certainty in terms of the grant funding. I know there's another item we've got to deal with that as well, so that we can just get this underway.
Thank you, Councillor. Any speakers against? Councillor Williams?
Not speak. Yes.
Councillor speaking for? Councillor Williams?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. It's refreshing that we're now talking about what the community asked for when the grant was first given, that we not proceed with artificial turf. It's been my long-held belief that the community has rejected that concept, and the way that people have held on to the desire to have artificial turf, but it was clearly evident that artificial turf was not appropriate on many grounds, that we've now got to this point where we're rushing to get to the end. In relation to the NESROC, which has been referred to tonight, NESROC is a collective of council. It's not binding on council. Council can take or leave whatever parts of reports or documents that are produced. So because it says that we've got a deficiency and we need to work to fill that, that's a noble agenda, a noble position to be in. But the reality is that this problem is caused by overdevelopment in Sydney and the ever-increasing population without the appropriate allocation of areas for recreation or for sport, or for revisiting what is possible with sport. There is futsal, which is a much more compact version of soccer. Basketball is taking over from a lot of traditional sports that were very encompassing of open space. Cricket is now a lot of kids are playing basketball rather than cricket. So there is changing trends, and I think it's important that the unrealistic expectation of the planning system on councils to provide. In a council like Hunters Hill, we don't have any spaces that we can create, except for maybe the horse paddock and maybe utilising some of the school ovals to fill what is a very big void. And by making use of this grant, we can help our local community, but it's certainly not going to have any impact or contribution to the broader, even if we went down an artificial turf position. So I think we've got to put in perspective what NESROC is about and not rely on that as justification for council's decision making. So my way of thinking is that we need to, and I know it's been removed from the motion, but I think the community has spoken very loudly, and I think we need to put in our documentation strong statements in relation to where the community stands. And the word prohibition I supported because I thought it gave a very clear indication that at this point in time, we're just not interested in artificial turf in our reserves. And that gives a clear indication to the community of where council sits. That's now been removed. And really what's in its place has already been done within the plan of management. So I think that's a bit sad, but that's the reality of where this vote's going to go. And I do thank the community for their continued support of what is the appropriate outcome, which is putting our climate first and putting our community first and making sure that we do have the appropriate surface in that location. We've also heard comments made in relation to 1.5 increase in the field. That is still to be discussed and gone through with the community. And I found in the further report on that community meeting, it very unsatisfactorily ignored upgrading the turf. It just gave 3 outcomes of the meeting, which I think that is something we can talk about when we get to that part. So I think it's very important that council make a strong statement. It should have done it 3 years ago, and we would have had the new field in place by now. So I'm quite happy to support this recommendation.
Thank you, councillor. Any speakers against?
Speak for.
Speak for. Councillor Preston.
I'd like to speak for the motion in its revised form. I think initially when I read the recommendation proposed by Councillors Crasso and Quinn, I was nervous that this would set back the project quite a bit of time. Consultations take forever and they're costly, and my consideration first and foremost would be for the people of this community that they deserve better. And if I campaigned for one thing in December, it was that our community does deserve better than playing fields that aren't irrigated properly or not congruous with our obligations to the climate. And so to set this project back some time would be negligent of our council and its governance. So I support the recommendation in its form, which is largely parallel to the recommendation as provided in the council report, I will point out, now that it's been amended. So thank you, and I acknowledge all the work that Councillor Crasso has put into this and your efforts in general in terms of this site. I think you've, in your last term of council as well, played quite a keen interest in ensuring its efficacy.
Thank you, councillor. Any other speakers for? Councillor Sanderson.
Yeah. I will continue to support the motion. I'm disappointed that a motion that I had assisted Councillor draft is some of the very important parts was removed. It is essential, and we've made a very clear statement at point 1, and that came out of significantly that important meeting we had on the 22nd of February. Community spoke very loudly and very clearly, and we must listen. We're fixing the problem for the immediate development of Lakeville Reserve. I would like to see us make a longer term statement about this. That longer term statement could have been made if the recommendation 2 or part 2 of the recommendation had remained. I'm disappointed that it's been. I think it's a good position that the only exception that we are making to artificial turf is cricket pitches. That seems to be the most viable solution. Very happy to see that occur. As to 4, again, I return to the manner in which we conducted that forum on the 22nd of February. I'm delighted that it came out of an amendment I put to a motion in June last year. I believe that people of Henley in particular and many others spoke so strongly on this, it was most convincing. I've been a long believer that town hall meetings are an important part of our feedback mechanism. That meeting on 22nd of February reminded me of a meeting about 20 years ago. And I think the mayor at that time, I can't think his name, but was from Baronia Park. And there was a proposal up.
Councillor Lucas.
That's right, Bruce Lucas, I apologise. Anyway, the town hall was just absolutely packed. And it was over a development issue that the community strongly opposed. A motion came from the floor, it really didn't have any effect, but that was the end of that proposal. The community spoke. The community must be given the opportunity to speak. And the thing about consultation, it cannot be superficial. When people have an input, we must listen, we must take it on board, and we must act on what the community are telling us. They cannot be ignored, and this is where this has failed, in that this matter was first brought up after the election, of which a promise was made about artificial turf on Gladesville Reserve. It came, as Councillor Quinn would know well, it came to a briefing of councillors, and I think Councillor Williams was probably the strongest in his opposition at that time. I know I had things to say. I think, as I recall, I think Councillor Crasso also had things to say.
I've always got things to say.
But they, unfortunately, were ignored. The matter went underground and it resurfaced last March. I guess as councillors, we might have been a bit more daring and moved to bring it forward or have it resurface earlier. We responded Councillor Williams, Councillor Crasso and I responded as I think the community desired, with the foreshadowed motion I brought in April last year. That is the thing that's robbed us of time. And the sad thing about that robbing us of time is that we will now have to compromise our plan, a plan of management that should have taken into account all of these things. Plan of management is now going to be devoid of I think, an important statement on a vital environmental issue. I think they're the principal points I want to make. I think I'll make some other points in this area and some of the other items before council, but I will, disappointedly, having put some time into this motion, continue to support it. But again, I am disappointed in the amendments.
Councillors, before your right of reply, Councillor Crasso, I will just say that echoing some of that sentiment, point 4 about the continued consultation is the key in whatever happens with Gladesville Reserve, and we will be considering a motion later in the paper, but that was a very good public meeting that we had down at Henley. I want to do more of those types of meetings. And I think that it is essential that any proposal for any project of this nature go to subsequent meetings of that style, especially with residents of Henley. So I would like to see that sort of meeting workshop through with any proposals that come out of tonight, if proposals do come out of the meeting. I think that's really essential. Councillor Craswell, right of reply.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'm really delighted to have heard everyone speak in support of this, or almost everyone, and I think, as disappointing as it is for some of the councillors and perhaps some of the community, how you build consensus sometimes is by a little bit of give and take, and if you give a little or take a little, you never don't have an opportunity to revise that as people come along on the journey and learn more about, for example, sustainability and synthetic grass. So I think, Councillor Sanderson, that item 6 on this notice of motion about developing a policy, hoping to investigate a policy of climate first, could address a suburb-wide strategy about synthetic and sustainability issues in the community, which is why I wasn't too worried about relinquishing that for now, in order to just have some consensus at the table, because really what our community need is consensus, because I think it's a really positive thing that we're doing here. We're moving forward. We have a really rundown clubhouse. We have a field that's been waiting on repair for a long time. We do have growth in soccer in our area. I don't actually need a needs analysis to see that much. How much does need a needs analysis? I think this is a great starting point. We must continue to work with the schools and the state government on that, because I think that they're changing their attitude there, and I think they are becoming more amenable to that, particularly in little suburbs like Hunters Hill, where there just isn't more land, because the inner city population of every major city in the world is growing, does grow, and so does density, and we will always need to find better ways to recreate in the great outdoors. We've got the clubhouse, we've got the field, we've got $2 million. Let's do it. Congratulations, everyone. Moving forward.
Councillor, I will put the motion. All those in favour? Yes, that is carried unanimously. Item 3.2, Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would you like me to read the motion?
You wish?
Yes. The motion I have put forward is that a report be prepared for inclusion in the business paper for Council's ordinary meeting of what will be held in April 2022. That one summarises the changes that are being considered to the existing local environmental plan and development control plan that in the current review. 2, advise whether any actions in Council's local strategic planning statement give rise to opportunities to improve the LEP or DCP in terms of their protection and restoring the tree canopy and tree canopy and biodiversity corridors. And if not, whether such improvements to the LEP and DCP can be achieved by other means. 3, sets out stages of this LEP and DCP making process and the timelines required by the Department of Planning and Environment. 4, advises whether the timeline for the LEP and DCP making process has been extended because of the 3-month delay in holding the local government elections, and whether Council has grounds to request an extension to the timeline. 5, reports on the progress in preparation of the Council's new LEP and DCP, and whether the DPE timelines can be met. 6, advises whether additional resources are required to deliver the new LEP and DCP that will continue to protect our cultural, built and natural heritage.
Seconded by Councillor Williams. Yes. Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I note the General Manager has made some comments on in the business paper as to briefings by Council. There's also been material sent around which includes slides for the briefing that councillors will receive. I note already that there are some concerns I can see in that material. I think it's timely that this material comes out. There has been a lot of work done in this area. And at this point in time, apart from the recently received material, the main thing councillors know about this is that we have looked at character statements which will be worked into our DCP. We have seen items about the Gladesville Master Plan, although its original concept was that that would be a later planning proposal rather than it be a or rather than it be an integral part of the current LEP DCP review. But this is not just about councils, it's also about the community. I think it's vital that this information is published in an accessible place. The timing of it means that because the work is being done to brief councils, means that it shouldn't be that difficult for this report to be prepared. At the same time, when it's published in the business paper in April, assuming the motion is successful, that gives this community the opportunity to review what is going on. And I think there's a great deal in there that we need, it's being a very engaged community. They will be very interested in. It's entirely appropriate, as we'll be talking about, that the community has the opportunity to inform the directions we take with any amendment to the LEP or DCP. I'm conscious of time to get through this agenda, so I'll leave this.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other speakers on this item? Councillor Williams, or I assume?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, as a seconder, I'll speak for. I'd just like to expand on the thoughts which went behind this motion. The LEP and DCP are the fundamental building blocks of our planning processes in Huddersfield, and it's a reflection of the values which this community holds. It's not a trivial matter, and it's something that should embrace and be involved in the community in the process. Councillors have been excluded in the process. This has been going on for almost, at least since June last year. We haven't had any reports to update us on what the thinking is or what the building blocks that are going to go into this are. So I'm very concerned about lack of transparency around this process. And it's great, Mr. Mayor, that now you come to the view that public meetings are good. I've been advocating that through the whole of last council term. And for example, the Bronya Park thing was a classic, that council refused to have a public meeting, but did it in a ad hoc and patchwork way. It's important that the community is involved in these critical planning instruments, and it's an obligation on this council to do that quickly and thoroughly. And having a private secret briefing on this issue is not acceptable. The community have to be aware if we're going to get this done by June, which I think is absolutely ridiculous timeframe, considering the community haven't even seen some of the details that are in the slides that have been circulated to councillors for the briefing. It's going to be too late again to engage with the community in a meaningful way, and shortcuts will be made, and rushing to get things done will be done to the detriment of what I see as the two fundamental documents in what controls the look and feel and what we see as important values of this community. It should be about a review, not a new, and it should be embracing and making very clear that our current planning instruments and levers within those are supported and pursued in this revised plan. So I implore council to get on with the community engagement on this. It's been too long in the process, not only for councillors to be engaged, but also, most importantly, to inform the community and give them a chance to say how these critical documents will be shaped into the future. So I commend the recommendation.
Councillor, any other speakers for or against? No, I'll assume that I don't need right to reply, Councillor. No. I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Now move to item 4.1, Gladesville Reserve Field Upgrade. We have a number of speakers for this item. I will invite Dr. Alastair Sharp. Address council, you have 3 minutes, Dr. Sharp.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are three options to revitalise the playing field. We started with, there was the synthetic field, and that one has been put aside. The hybrid field of 95% grass and 5% synthetic, and a 1.5 size field. Now, the 1.5 size field has a real problem associated, which nobody has mentioned yet, because in the revised plan of management that's coming up tonight, item 4.4 says that one of the management objectives is to maintain and increase the tree canopy across sports ground areas so as to improve shade provision, habitat quality, and visual character. And objective 3.4.1 is to conserve existing shade tree canopy and review opportunities to increase tree canopy. Now, my understanding is that a 1.5 size field is going to require a bigger amount of land, and that land currently has trees on it. And so if you're to expand to a 1.5 field, you'd be going directly against some of the management objectives that are embodied in this new plan of management. That's just a very difficult thing to consider. So I ask you to consider it this evening. And I ask you to abandon the idea of a 1.5 size field, because it just goes against the policies that are before you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sharp. Is there any questions to Dr. Sharp?
Yeah,
Councillor
Mr.
Quinn?
Mayor, if I may. So my understanding in the report is it's saying explore it, not lock it in. So it's about, you know, seeing how it can be delivered. Rather, so what we're, if this gets up tonight, it's not actually saying there will be 1.5 fields. The key word is explore. So it'll flush out all the issues, I'd suggest, which you're raising there, and where the community sits with those. Is that how you see it, or?
Well, I don't think I remember seeing a 1.5 size field in the plan of management at all. Right. So it's quite primitive to consider the plan of management. And I think that really you have to abandon any short-term idea of knocking over this plan of management. And I don't know where the hybrid field fits in, because I don't remember seeing that in the plan of management either.
Thanks, Alistair.
Thank you, Dr. Sharp. Councillor Williams.
Dr. Sharp, in the opening part of your address to council, you made reference to three issues: synthetic field, hybrid, and 1.5 natural. Yeah. Is it your recollection that the public meeting that was held at Henley, that there's a fourth option, which is upgrade the existing field with natural turf?
You're correct.
It seems to be missing.
Yes, yes. And I found actually the paper to this report seemed to be heavily favouring a particular outcome, whereas I think that the council reports should be even-handed.
Councillors, any other questions to Dr. Sharp? Councillor Cresswell?
Just to clarify, Dr. Sharp, in the notice of motion that we just debated, it does actually say that synthetic materials not be included in turf for the field. So that would include hybrid.
I don't know if that hybrid meant 5% distributed throughout the grass, or whether it would refer to the cricket pitch. It's not explained.
I think that what Councillor Cresswell is saying is that either would be unacceptable by virtue of the motion that was passed 10 minutes ago.
No, sorry, just to clarify. So a hybrid field is a playing field, not a cricket pitch. It's a playing field that has some synthetic stitched into it.
Okay, yeah, I understand put in that, yeah.
Yeah, and so the notice of motion that I just wrote actually rules that out as well.
Okay, excellent.
Councillors, any other questions? Thank you, Dr. Sharp. Paul, you're back in the hot seat. You have 3 minutes.
First, I'd like to say that Sustained Gladesville Reserve is in support of an upgrade to Gladesville Reserve, and very exciting, but it's moving ahead. I have a few comments on the report as set out in the agenda, particularly as it does relate to the consideration of the 1.5 field concept. The reference 1.5 field concept was only shown briefly at the community forum on the 22nd of February and wasn't the topic of any discussion or debate at that thing. It was shown as a single slide, and there was no real discussion from the football club or from council about what it would actually involve. And it's my understanding that that concept has not been made available to the broader public, and it certainly wasn't discussed in detail at the forum. Before we explore possible concepts, I think it still remains incumbent on council first to perform the needs analysis that identifies the needs of the community and the resources available to council. And perhaps this addresses the councillor's earlier question. The needs analysis specific to Hunters Hill itself, and more particularly, of course, the Gladesville Reserve, so that the solution that we get is suitable for Gladesville Reserve and actually provides what the ratepayers need. The needs analysis needs to be a bit more granular. Like, do we need more lit training spaces for cricket or for football, or is it more competition fields? Is it more practice golf? What is it? Is it more dog walking area? Is it more bike paths? Until you do that needs analysis, any concept that's put forward is necessarily going to be heavily revised and will take longer to process. So that's my particular concern. And whilst a possible expansion of the playing surface may well be an achievable and practical solution for Gladesville Reserve, the extent of any expansion and the configuration and location of the facilities like playing field markings, cricket pitch, cricket nets, amenities block, playground, lighting, bike paths, etc., they can only be determined once that proper needs analysis has been undertaken. And I think that can only happen if we have another community workshop like we did before. I think that would be very helpful to everyone. From my initial review of the 1.5 field concept, because I have seen it, I have immediate concerns about the location of the cricket nets. There's insufficient run-ups for the bowlers. It poses a potential threat to traffic because it's heading up the hill towards the traffic. The eastern edge of the expanded playing field is too close to Huntley's Point Road, posing a threat to pedestrians, traffic and players. And then there's the important consideration of the potential relocation of the playground and the siting and scale of a new amenities block. Until we know what size amenities block, we clearly need better change rooms for both male and female participants. We need, do they need a canteen? Until we know the scale of what we actually need and the options available, which may include the Henley Community Centre or other things, how can we possibly explore, 1.5 field concept? The report also indicates that there's a time restriction on the project to retain the funding and
Councillors, extension of time, moved Councillor Sanderson, seconded Councillor Williams, all in favour, against, carried.
But I was unable to find any reference to the particular timeframe associated with the funding. It seems like we're under pressure from the state government to use it, but no one set out, is there a specific timeframe? It says there's a time restriction. Well, what does that mean? Is there really a time restriction, or are we just under pressure to use it? Let's make sure we get the decision right. And if that is available to council, I think it's incumbent on council to make that available to the community. And in any event, in light of those issues, I can't see how either of the proposed timeframes can be adopted in relation to any concept, let alone one which has not been available for community comment and consultation before the plan of management is revised, submitted and formally approved.
Thank you, Paul. I will just say, I might just ask for some clarifications first to the General Manager, just on the timelines, or to Stuart. I would hope also that some of those needs analysis and the work of the Sports and Recreation Committee could be done concurrently and would feed into any proposal. And I think it's important, as you say, to have more public consultation with particularly that group that came down to Henley, but the community more broadly. So, Nick, are you able to talk to the timeline question?
Yeah, Mr. Dutton probably is better given he's dealing with the department, but we have given them back a timeline that's been accepted. So maybe run through that, Stuart.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the department did insist on us giving a timeline. At this stage, I've given them the option that is option one. I've asked for a response on that to see whether they accept that. I don't have that at this stage. Once I do, then we'll notify everybody. The original timeline for this grant was we should be finishing in April 2022, which is next month. So that's what was in the deed of agreement with the department. As far as and along that, there's key milestones which have to be met at various periods. There was one meant to be at June 21, one September 21, December 21, then February 22, and then obviously finishing in April. So they were the original timelines.
Councillors, do we have any other questions? Paul? Councillor Sanderson?
Yes, I believe with your expertise in sport, have you had a look at different possible layouts for the ground, and would you advocate the maximum flexibility in terms of how you might place things in?
I'm not sure I'm an expert, but I have certainly played a lot of sport, and I do have some ideas. But again, it would sort of jump ahead of the needs analysis. But there are alternatives if the existing playing field cannot be enlarged without removing too many trees or it's inappropriate. Instead of having 3 mini roost fields running transversely, you could run 2 longitudinally. That gains about 20 metres, which means the field wouldn't need to be positioned far to the east. That might be something. It would still, but unless we know what we're trying to achieve, where the amenities, what might be located, where do you put the playground? We don't know necessarily what we're trying to achieve. But I've got lots of ideas about what could and should be. If it is an enlarged surface, do we get 2 cricket fields, pitches on it, so you can play 2 junior cricket matches on a Saturday? What does the community actually need, and how do we get a solution with this money that best delivers that? I don't think we're there. I don't think we have the input.
Councillors, any other questions? No? Thank you, Paul. The next speaker is Maureen Ball, who's asked for her comments to be read out.
Thank you. My name is Maureen Ball, a resident of Henley. I've asked my comments to be read out at Council Meeting 4505, 21st of March 22. Item number 4.1, Gladesville Reserve Field Upgrade. Moving forward, at the Henley Community Forum held on 22nd of February 22, there was no proposed concept for a 1.5 fields. There was a draft proposal with no detail and no community consultation, and this matter could be discussed at another community forum. I feel it's important that community should be involved with any final decision on the Gladesville Reserve, as the park should be available, not only to organise sport groups, but for the whole community. The upgrade of the Gladesville Reserve using natural turf is a positive outcome for organised sports and the whole community.
Thank you. Ms. Simone Concha, you have 3 minutes.
I'll make this quick because Paul's pretty much covered all of the key points that I wanted to make. There was one thing that I just wanted to check in terms of the wording that's included in the report in the agenda. The purpose states that the funding is for an upgrade of the playing field, but Sustaining Gladesville Reserve understood that the upgrade is for, the funding is for upgrading the sports facilities. Now, that's an important distinction because it would allow the funding to be used for upgrading the basketball courts, the skate park, mountain bike paths, and so on. If, for example, a 1.5 field is not an appropriate solution or doesn't go forward, then it would be important that that funding could be used for other things in Gladesville Reserve. And I just wanted to sort of check in with you if that was actually the original wording.
Stuart, if you could respond to that. I would also point out that the bike track paths actually technically don't exist on council's plans, and they're ad hoc, but they are
yes, and
pretty
I don't
cool.
necessarily mean the ones that are already there. I mean maybe more formal and appropriate things.
I'll ask Stuart.
Yep.
Yes, the words that are in there were taken from the deed. So I was just trying to pull it up so I could read it directly from there for you, but I can't quite.
So the deed says an upgrade of the playing field.
If you give me 5 minutes, I could find it, but.
Councillors, do you have any other questions, Mrs. Concha? Well, if we can find that deed.
And sorry, I had one other thing that I just wanted to touch on, and that was the 2 options that have been put forward. And really just wanted to say thank you for option 2. I think that's wonderful to see that there has specifically been time put in there to consult with the community and to advertise. I would suggest that if the sports field is going to be increased by 50%, and that would obviously require removal of trees and so on, that process should be subject to a DA. But if there wasn't to be an increase in the sport field, that the development without consent process proposed would appear to be acceptable, as long as it does include the public meeting and advertisement period. So, thank you.
Thank you. Have you got?
Yes, I do. Key objectives, to provide improved playing surface that will have increased playing capacity that can be used for more hours each week and all year round. A higher quality playing surface that enables more players, more teams and more sports to use the ground for a range of active and passive recreation pursuits.
Thank you.
Councillors, Councillor Preston.
Thank you for your time 2 times tonight, and for your efforts in advocating for your community group. I think it is important to note that the upgrade of the playing fields does go, I mean, I'm taking this from the report, but to the need of our local football club that did register 755 players and 65 teams, and they're now the 7th largest club in that region that we play in. So I just wanted to highlight, I take your point, and I'm not for a synthetic surface on the field, but I just think that in terms of a needs analysis, and you mentioned diverting funds to other areas of the reserve, I think the playing field is the most pertinent kind of lacking space for our community. So my attentions would be directed at the playing fields.
100%.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Sanderson.
Yeah, just a final one, given the previous question. But my belief has always been that any case with the foreshadowed motion I put in last year could be diverted into facilities such as change rooms. I mean, if we're going to have a first-class playing surface down there, how does your group fund change facilities so inclusive of all ages, genders and abilities as the principal source of those funds being used to improve that facility?
And in Gladesville Reserve acknowledges that the playing field area really needs an upgrade. And so however much is required to do a really good modern natural turf upgrade, we would expect that to be used there as priority number 1. And then we're quite happy to leave it up to council to decide where else, that if there's any funding left over, where else that should be used. But we do understand, and you know, I have children that play for All Saints as well. So we understand that those facilities there are terrible at the moment. They really do need an upgrade. But equally there's, you know, again, it comes back to a needs analysis that is put out to the whole community, because we've been seeing a lot more use of mountain biking and other things around that park, and I'm sure that those kind of facilities would be really valued as well. So.
Thank you, Ms. Concha. If there's no other questions, no. Councillors.
Mr. Mayor, I've got a question there to Mr. Dutton. Could I get you to read that again, please, that grant approval? Because there's something there that I wasn't aware of.
That's the deed of agreement that was signed, so it's not an approval, it's what we've agreed.
Yeah, if you could read that again.
The key objectives again?
Yeah. What I'm trying to ascertain is, like what I heard, and maybe I was incorrect, but it can only be used for the playing surface.
No, there's further detail when you can come into the scope, and it talks about things like fencing, lighting and other ancillary things to make more playing possible.
Amenities, toilet blocks, change rooms.
Project includes the construction of a new high-quality, well-constructed playing field in the same location as the existing turf field. The new playing field will include lights for night training and new perimeter fence around the pitch. The new playing field will be marked for soccer and futsal, including a cricket wicket for summer sport. That's all it has in there. I don't believe there's any issue with amenities because it is allowing the actual sport to have greater use.
So the grant funding can be used for amenities.
My understanding, I can get that clarified.
Yeah, if you could, because that's a critical piece of information.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
There's some big dollars attached to that amenities.
I think the purpose, though.
Councillor Preston.
Sorry. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Dutton, if you could clarify. If the purpose stipulated by that agreement is to facilitate more use of the field, then change rooms, facilities, anything ancillary to the playing on the field would be essential to achieving that purpose.
I would suggest, and
that's the
Mr.
devil's in the
Dutton,
detail. Yeah.
and Mr. Dutton can confirm that we will have to negotiate with the department anyway, because we do have to change timelines and things as a result of this process.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, one of the things that we do need to address as part of it, one of our key milestones, is agreeing on scope with them. So, okay.
Mr. Mayor, is there a question for you to Mr. Dutton?
Councillor Williams.
You made reference to the grant is for the existing playing field, upgrade the existing playing field. Is that correct? Is that the word you use?
I think it was in the location of the existing. In the constructed playing field in the same location.
Okay, I thought I heard that. The other question I had for you is based on the analysis that Councillor Sanderson provided last year, that going down a natural turf process will be significant, like really significantly cheaper than going down the artificial turf. So there will be some surplus funds, and I think we need to be able to negotiate the appropriate use of those funds for enhancing other facilities there. So I'd hate to think that, I think your analysis, Councillor Sanderson, was around the order of about 700,000 or 800,000 plus other, but it was
1 million.
1 million. Okay, so it's half. So I'd hate to think that we would be giving back half. So
They might take it away from us.
We'll be trying not to be giving back any,
so
to be quite honest.
Yeah, councillors, we'll spend it all, don't you worry.
Yeah. Councillor Sanderson.
If I could, through you, Mr. Mayor, and a further question. The wording of that grant document, did that come from the department or did it come from us?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I can't answer. I wasn't involved.
Acting General Manager, could you clarify that, or is?
Look, I can't recall either because it was done.
Have to
I
take
might
that
have
on
signed
notice.
it, but it was actually presented to me as a document when I became the acting general manager. So
We'll
I'd have
take
to
that on
it
notice and clarify.
A further question, which may have to be taken on notice if I could through. Yeah, and that is, what was the date of that?
We'll take that on notice too, Councillor Sanderson. I'll call on Ewan McLeod now because time's getting on. President of All Saints, joining us via Zoom. Oh, he's gone. I won't call on Ewan McLeod. Councillors, we have a recommendation in front of us for item 4.1. I've got a mover. Councillor Crassoy, seconded Councillor Priest. Councillor Crassoy.
Mr. Mayor, if I could move it with a slight amendment.
Yes, if we could just pull up the motion. Councillor.
Thank you. That item 2, that a needs analysis and subsequent concept options and costing, etc.
Could I suggest concurrent rather than subsequent?
That wouldn't work, I don't think, because the needs analysis would take what the concept would be.
Okay.
It does say that a needs analysis, concept option and costing be prepared in consultation with community, stakeholder groups, etc. So it kind of suggests
I'm
that we keep rolling.
happy either way, just conscious that we're on timelines here, but no.
It suggests that we keep rolling the rest of that sentence. That's why I didn't want to mess with it too much.
Councillor Preston, you happy with that?
Can I ask a question? What would be involved in this proposed needs analysis?
As I understand it, it would be in consultation with the Sports and Recreation Committee, actually getting the appropriate data around what the situation with our sports facilities are now and what the needs are for the potential of the growth of those sports, consistent with the NESROC strategy.
So like a survey to the sports clubs and then the broader community?
It would be via the Sports and Recreation Committee.
Mr. Mayor, I'd suggest that's just one piece of the puzzle, because the sports groups are only one of the or multiple user groups. Yeah, but it's got to be the broader.
Yes.
Yeah. So the needs analysis isn't just the sports groups.
I did say that.
Yeah. Just so we're aware of that.
So you're happy with
Can I
that?
just make a comment on that too? We've commenced consultation with sporting groups, and we're down the track in this regard. So I think there's stuff that we can bring back to the committee very quickly and keep this moving. We'll be able to give you a bit of a summary on that pretty quickly.
Thank you, Acting General Manager. Councillor Preston, are you happy with that amendment?
I am, but I just wonder if we could put a deadline on this proposed needs analysis. I don't know if that's feasible, and maybe a question to Mr. Dutton through you, Mr. Mayor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I mean, look, we can put a deadline on, yes, but it means that something else will have to give for that to be done on a deadline.
Right.
We only have limited resources, so if we do one, we've got to sort of shuffle things around.
Councillors, with your indulgence, Ewan is in the waiting room. Are you happy for him to address the meeting? Sure. I know that there's a motion on the floor, but Ms. McLeod, you have 3 minutes. Ewan?
Yeah, sorry, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, good now.
All right, awesome. Sorry, I just dropped out and I'm trying to get back in. So look, I don't want to hold up anything in the meeting. I think from our club's perspective, the 1.5 field proposal is a concept. It's not set in stone. More than happy to talk with anybody and everybody around it. Again, we are using the language 1.5. It's not actually that big. It's actually probably more like 1 1/3, but it's probably easier to say 1.5. Again, the cricket net that was in that concept plan, and again referring to I just had a mind blank around the cricket guy who, when he presented and through conversations I've had with him, or when he spoke at the forum, again, he's open to the idea of again, this is kind of falls back onto this needs analysis of whether it's appropriate to have nets at Gladesville Reserve, or if it's better to have it at Wheel Park, trying to make Wheel Park more into a cricket home. Again, I'll let cricket speak to that point. Again, through any further consultation that happens. So yeah, from a football club, it's a concept. Happy to talk to anyone and everyone, and yeah, I'll stop there.
Thank you, Ewan. Councillors, any questions? No? Thank you, Ewan. We'll go back to the motion on the floor. Councillor Cresswell, do you want to speak to that?
They're just checking.
Sorry, can I speak against the amendment to the motion?
Not as a seconder. You need to be happy as the seconder. Yes.
Can I withdraw my second?
Yes. Councillors, are in your hands. Is there a second to the motion? Councillor Quinn. Cresswell.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and I'm sure there was a sharp breath in at the desk, and I apologise for doing it. But once again, what I'm trying to do here is build a positive consensus environment for our council officers to consult with the community, for the community to feel like they've been heard, because I've been hearing needs analysis for over a year now. And I don't feel it's a big compromise to make, because as the General Manager rightly pointed out, we are pedalling down that path already. We did have a report that came to Council well over a year ago that did identify the needs in the community. We do have the information in the NESROC report which identifies the need in our broader northern region. And we have our population statistics and we have the club statistics. So the information is well underway. But what I love is that the president of the club just hopped on, having overheard that little snippet of conversation, and said, you know, I'm not wedded to this at all. And cricket have said that they might quite like the idea of setting up cricket down at Wheel Park, which frees up more. And that's what happens when you do a needs analysis and in collaboration and consultation with the stakeholders in the community. It's only one extra little adjustment to the sentence. And I appreciate that it's going to need a bit of extra work, but I think the work's already underway. And I think the way the motion's worded is that it can keep peddling along in consultation. So,
Councillor Crasso, I just want to point out that we will not be able to adopt item 3, the timelines of this report, if we amend that wording. So we'll have to put some form of amended timeline, a timeline as amended maybe, to include a needs analysis, something of that nature, if we want to carry the motion.
can we say that option 2 be endorsed pending approval of the plan of management, and that a timeline be brought back to a future council?
I would, I'll take Stuart's advice on this, but I would err on the side of amending a timeline to provide to the department, just so that they have clarity from us and don't use that as a club to thump us.
I see.
Yeah.
So
I welcome Mr. Dutton's comment.
I think, yeah, if we can just give us a little bit of flexibility to scope this out properly, to see what the needs analysis is going to include, and then come back with a timeline. I think it's important that we get it accurate, because the department won't want us to keep on changing things.
no, so that the timeline in the report be amended.
True, yeah.
And option 2.
Yeah.
The time.
Reflects the change in item 2, something like that.
That the timeline in the report be amended to include the needs analysis.
Yeah.
And option 2 be endorsed pending approval of plan of management.
So Quinn, you're happy with that?
Oh, that's fine. Yep.
Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Cresswell?
I think I just did.
Yes. Any speakers against the motion?
I'd like to move an amendment, Mr. Mayor.
If you will.
In point 3, or what is it currently now? Option.
Point 3.
Yeah, I think we need to endorse option 1 with amendments to it to make sure that in option 2, that council a public meeting to outline the option, advertisement and feedback to council. So those issues which engage with the council need to be brought up within a DA process.
So I need an amendment.
Well, that's what I
wording of the amendment.
With the inclusion from option 2 of a public meeting to outline the options and advertise the options for 21 days, and that goes in before the development of a DA application.
Mr. Mayor, a point of clarification, if I may.
Yes, Councillor Quinn.
To either the General Manager or Mr. Dutton. So we've got one option with DA and one option without DA. If there is a proposal to remove trees, we need a DA. Is that correct? It is everywhere else in the municipality.
We actually did discuss this today quite extensively.
Yeah.
Not being in a conservation zone, we can go through the normal process of applying for a permit to remove trees, which still not the DA process, but the permit.
Okay.
And so we still do have to do that.
Yep. Okay. Now let's say also as a result of the needs analysis, and what comes out of it is the amenities block's going to get demolished and moved. We are then in DA territory, or not?
Mr. Mayor, no, under The
We're in
SEP
SEP
territory. We can,
infrastructure SEP. Okay.
Yep.
Right. Okay. So in your view, it is possible for option to move ahead with those two critical moments of approval needed, that they don't have to go to DA.
yes.
Yep, because I'm conscious that the time is ticking with these two options, and one of them is some months longer than the other one. Okay, thanks.
Councillor Williams, do you want to speak to your amendment?
Seconder?
Seconded, Councillor Sanderson.
Yeah.
Councillor Williams.
We've heard tonight from our speakers from the community, and we've heard around the table here of the importance of us engaging with the community and being transparent about the process. It does concern me that council is not prepared to put itself through the same rigours which it would expect any other changes, whether it's trees or buildings or whatever. Everybody has to put a DA in, and the DA gives that transparency and gives that focus for the community to understand what's going on. And I find it strange that in the DA process, you're not prepared to have further consultation with the community except the DA exhibition period. And I would have thought, if we're genuine about consultation with the community, that before we went to a DA stage, that we actually engage with the community and make sure what we're doing with the DA is going down the right path. So again, here we are chasing our tail. We're trying to fit into some timeline, which no one can tell us what the timeline is in terms of when is the drop dead time for this grant to disappear. And to be quite honest, the motion and the option makes no reference to a field and a half.
Correct.
So, to my way of thinking, if we go ahead with the comment that was raised in the actual deed of agreement, that we upgrade the existing field, we can get on with it virtually today and do the necessary consultation and move forward. But if we're going to go down the process of exploring a whole range of other options or an additional change in scale and use and location of things, to do a genuine community consultation with that, you're delaying it by 6 months. So my way of thinking is that the motion is about upgrading the existing field. It should be about a DA process that includes community consultation. That's the problem we've had with the Boronia Park issue. Council ignored the community and just went ahead with the DA. It ignored its advisory committees, and I hope it's not going to ignore its advisory committee in relation to the needs analysis. So to me, I think we need to separate out the two issues. One is moving forward with delivering on the grant outcomes, and you can run another process alongside it, looking at the needs as to how you might embellish that. And if that happens in alignment with where we're going with the grant, then we can modify what we're going to do with the grant. But at the moment, if we do this in a genuine and transparent way, all the talk about engaging the community, exploring new options, is just going to push it right out. And at the moment, no one can tell me when it has to be done by. It's classic local government. You need to be able to have the facts on the table. You need to be able to be clear and have the clarity about what you're trying to do. And that's why the community's crying out for a needs analysis. We're going ahead without really knowing what we need. Anyway, that's why I think we need to modify the recommendation.
Councillor, any speakers against? Councillor Preston.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, firstly, I think it's incredibly indulgent of our council, being a very prosperous and economically sound local community, in contrast to other areas of the state that may need this funding more than we do. That said, I think that our community deserves better. I'll echo my previous sentiment, than a field that doesn't provide adequate facilities and where we've been given a grant, we should be embracing it with open arms. And yes, consultation is essential. I don't think that we've neglected to consider that consultation is an integral part of this process. We've held a public consultation already. Councillor Crassoy's motion facilitates a further public meeting. We will continue to do that. I don't think that, and I think we're in furious agreement at this table tonight that we implore the council and the acting general manager and Stuart to arrange further public consultation. That is not in dispute by anyone. I don't think that, and you know, Councillor Crassoy articulated it quite well when she said this process is already well underway, to quote you. We have consulted the community. We are listening to the needs of different community groups. We must not neglect to consider other perspectives which have been brought to us tonight. For example, that of the president of the football club. And I think that I'm satisfied almost with the acting general manager's advice that this consultation process is already happening, that we are considering all these different factors. There's literally statistics included in the report tonight that teach us why we need more capacity on the field, why we need to be pushing forward with this grant to satisfy the needs of our local community. It is time and time again that the needs, particularly of our youth community, that get pushed to the sideline. And that was, you know, a big driver in me running in the local election, and potentially a reason that I got elected was because I stand for people who are currently left to the wayside in our community and its decision-making on this council. Stuart has explained that we have missed multiple deadlines that we've provided to the state government. So with due respect, Councillor Williams, I don't think that we have been lacking in transparency about, or that the office has been lacking in transparency about when this needs to be done by. I think it's indulgent that we've neglected to deliver for the department. I think that it's a waste of everyone's time to consider, you know, ancillary issues to, you know, these impeccable reports that are brought forward to us tonight, and, you know, a recommendation that we all agreed on. And I think it's costly, and it's costly to our community because their utility is decreasing by the minute that we leave Gladesville Reserve standing as it is, and it's decreasing in terms of the money that could well be taken away from us at any given moment by the department, because they're waiting for us on deadlines. They haven't heard what we're planning on doing with this money in a suffice manner, and we continue to debate these minuscule issues where we've all agreed on the crux of the issue, which is that this field needs to be amended, fixed, upgraded, all of the words that you used, and we can deal with the other things later. This, by accepting these amendments brought to the fore today, we will delay this process further. And it's all well and good to sit here and say that, you know, we all want this to push forward and we all agree that this is important for our community, but the actions at this table are not reflecting that sentiment, because this will delay the process. This will put us at risk of rejecting $2 million that we've sat on already for 3 years. 3 years our community has been deprived of adequate facilities at Gladesville Reserve. And I'm not in support, I'll say again, of synthetic surfaces. And I'm not in support of everything that the council has considered over the last 3 years while Ross Williams was the mayor. But today we have adequate reports in front of us. We have a good amendment and recommendation and notice of motion form. And I implore the council to please accept this in its current form. We've removed the synthetic references, as our community deserves better and our youths deserve attention.
Thank you, Councillor. Any speakers?
No, Mr. Mayor, just clarification. Can I just get a reminder of what we're actually voting on?
We are voting on the, sorry, can we bring
So
up
I want
the amendment that's on the floor, which is
the way that what I just saw on the screen there, I didn't quite understand.
yes. So the amendment is in.
That's
not the amendment.
That's the original.
Yeah. So there we are.
Can that be increased in size so I can read it?
So we're talking about clause 3
Full screen.
Option 1 with the inclusion of option 2 of the public meeting to outline the option.
And also the amendment at point 2.
The needs analysis. Yep, okay. I personally just find the way, Mr Mayor, if I may, number 3 there, I don't understand it.
That's why I asked for clear wording from Councillor Williams.
I don't understand
That's
it.
his wording.
Number 2 is clear. Number 3, I'm not sure what we're voting on.
That's the amendment as put.
Well, I can clarify what we're voting on if you can't
Yeah.
understand that.
Yeah.
Councillor Quinn,
So,
we adopt option 1 with the inclusion from option 2, not of option 2. It should be from option 2. The public meeting to outline options.
so if I may, Councillor, you're basically just saying option 1 of the public meeting.
Yes, I think
That's what I'm saying.
that
Yeah,
would
we
be,
get rid of with the inclusion of option 2.
would be made.
Or get rid of from option 2 and just say with the inclusion of a public meeting.
That's okay by that.
Is that all right?
Are you, is that your amendment?
That's very good.
Okay, now can I ask, sorry to be such a pedant, can I ask if we're going to have a public meeting,
Councillor Quinn.
is that going to change the timeline?
So we did
Yes.
include a public meeting in the
Option 1,
origin, in option 2.
in option 2?
In option 1, I'm looking through.
I can't see a public meeting
No.
in option 1, so that's therefore going to change the timeline unless it can happen concurrently.
It would amend it slightly, but it wouldn't be I don't see it would be a big drag on the timeline.
Now, if we go with this amendment, are we locking ourselves into a DA process?
Yes.
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 Okay.
Councillors, there's an amendment on the floor. We've had a speaker for, we've had a speaker against, we've got another speaker for. Against.
I'm going to speak against Mr Mayor.
Councillor Quinn.
I think we have enough consultation built into option 2. We're using planning instruments as they already exist. So I can't see why there isn't sufficient consultation in this motion, plus in what we moved earlier on to do with Gladesville Reserve, that we're not going to get enough consultation. It's the actual moment of decision about a specific tree removal or a specific moving an amenities block, but that is going to come out of the whole consultation process. So I'm comfortable that we're using existing planning legislation to be able to push forward with this.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other speakers for? Against? Not a reply, Councillor Williams.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a point of clarification. It was referred to the fact that I was mayor for the last 3 years, and the assumption around that I didn't appreciate. I was only mayor for the last 12 months, and
I said the last time.
no, the last 3 years. But anyway, we need to get our facts straight when we're debating things in council chamber. I think I disagree 100%. If we require our community to put DAs in to do things, council must be measured by the same process. I can't, and we're going down the same process we went down with the Baranya Park facility, where the community was not engaged in that DA process. And I implore council to stick to the planning principles and the planning process. Again, we don't know what the drop dead deadline is for all this. So we're talking about hypotheticals that we're going to lose money and whatever. I think we need to do the process correctly. And I disagree that we're in a process here of trying to hurry things along. We've got to get it right. And to be quite honest, I see nowhere in the recommendation, nor in the options, reference to a field and a half. So what we're dealing with here is what's in the deed of agreement, which is to upgrade the existing field with a better playing surface. And that's what this motion says. So why we can't get on with it and deliver for our community what should have been done 3 years ago, which is an upgrade with natural turf to improve the facility, and then there's some money left over to do some major enhancements for our sporting groups, is beyond me. Anyway, I think I'm going to lose this one, but I stand here for the community, and we've heard here tonight the community demands engagement and involvement, and I think council should live by its own planning instruments and its own rules, and it doesn't delay, but it gives a much more transparent and opportunity for community engagement in the process. So I think I'm going to lose, but that's okay.
Absolutely, thank you.
Can I just make
Councillor Quinn.
a comment, Mr Mayor? Can I suggest, councillor, that we all stand for the community in what we're here for tonight? We may have different opinions about exactly how we stand for the community, but I certainly believe I stand for the community, and I think that is shared by all of the councillors.
Councillor, I'll now put that amendment to a vote. Those in favour, against, that is
Sorry,
lost.
Do that again, please, Mr Mayor. Sorry,
So in favour of the amendment becoming the motion, against the amendment becoming the motion, that is lost.
Sorry.
We revert back to the original motion. Any other speakers?
Yes.
Councillor Williams.
Well, it's a question to start with, through you to the acting general manager. So the current motion talks about upgrading the field. It doesn't talk about a field and a half. Can I get some clarification as to what we're voting on here? And if we are voting on exploring a field and a half, it needs to be included in the motion, because the way I see it here, and the reason I raised my amendment was that we could move ahead very quickly with this, because there is fiercely agreement on upgrading the surface. There's a lot of work to be done on needs to see what additional changes and configurations and the consequences of taking trees out or expanding them too close to roads. All that is a separate issue. But what can I ask, what is the thing we're voting on here tonight? Because it's not stated explicitly in the motion.
Well, Councillor, I can clarify that for you. That is, in the motion, it says that a concept plan and costing be prepared in consultation with the community and stakeholder groups to upgrade, for the upgrade of Gladstone Reserve Field, including natural grass, drainage, irrigation, new amenities and cricket nets. That's the motion we're voting on.
No.
Actually.
Oh, sorry, with your slight wording change.
There's a needs analysis in there.
And the needs analysis.
So just to get clarification, we're not voting on exploring the option for a field and a half?
We're not explicitly voting on anything. We are voting on exploring the options in consultation with the community. The field and a half obviously is, as we've heard tonight and as we heard at the public meeting, a concept that is live in the community. So I dare say that will form part of the consultation process.
But what is the concept plan? It's not specified.
That's we're adopting a motion to develop a concept plan.
Oh, okay. I would have thought council could give some guidance on what that plan should be. Otherwise, we're going to chase our tail again.
Councillor Crassoy.
Oh, no, I wasn't sure if we were moving into conversation over
Yes.
beer or if we're, yeah.
So the motion, Mr Mayor, clarification,
Yes.
the motion is as on the screen now.
Yes.
Moved by councillor Crassoy, seconded by me.
By you, Councillor Quinn.
Spoken for by councillor Crassoy and against by councillor Williams.
Yes. Any speakers for?
Okay, if I could have the motion back up on the screen,
Sorry,
please.
Councillor Quinn.
Sorry to do that to you. Mr Mayor, the motion as it is on the screen there, a needs analysis and a subsequent concept options plan. So if a needs analysis and the conversation that goes with that, which is also part of that earlier motion, it could blow the 1.5 fields out of the water or out of the field. Who knows? Who knows? But we need to have that process of consultation and the needs analysis. The needs analysis is going to tell us about all those different user groups that are there, the sporting groups, but also the playground and the walkers and the dog walkers, all of that sort of stuff. I know a lot of that has already taken place, but we just need to get that very clear so that we can then come up with concept options, because the concept option that we currently have proposed, the 1.5 one, I don't think everyone's wild about. We're not there yet. So this is going to get us there. And then the process, we go from there, using existing planning legislation will get us an outcome.
Thank you, Councillor Quinn. Any speakers against? For Councillor Preston.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I speak for this amendment to the motion, because
we're back to the amended motion, but it is the motion.
It's now the motion.
Yes, it is the motion.
Because as the acting general manager pointed out, this needs analysis is already being undertaken. We are already conducting a needs analysis to determine what the community needs by virtue of the fact that we are hosting public consultations. We plan to host further public consultations. We are looking at the needs of the sporting clubs. We are looking at the way that the reserve is currently being used. So in my mind, I'm satisfied with what is currently happening. And this amendment to this motion, which is now the motion, merely just goes towards telling us what is already happening and enforcing what we all believe should be happening, which is public consultation, which is integrity, which is transparency about what is going on at the reserve, and in light of the needs of our community. So basically, we're just reinforcing what is already happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any speakers against? For right of reply, Councillor Crasaway.
Thanks, Mr. Merrill. Exactly. And again, so it's all in the language to make sure that everyone feels they've been heard and everyone's certain that they've been heard. And so those words are in there now. I would say, though, that to echo Councillor Quinn, we do have the planning tools in place to make sure that that consultation is happening. The sort of consultation that actually doesn't always necessarily happen with the DA. It's happened in the development of our community strategic plans. It's happened in our development of the plan of management, and it will happen as a result of these two motions in consultation with the community as we develop the plan as we go. And all of that comes back to us as a council transparently, with the whole community hopefully informed and hopefully on board, for us to make a decision on in their best interests. I'm very happy with where it's at. I'm apologising that it's a little more work, but once again, I just feel that it's worth it, so that we're not going back to the drawing board again in another 3 months. So.
Thank you, Councillor Crasaway. Councillor Quinn.
So do your pen Glades will reserve capital R, clause 2. Thanks.
Councillors, I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? Against? That is unanimous. Move to item 4.2, Fig Tree Park. I believe that we have a speaker to this. 4.2, Robin Catalano. You have 3 minutes, Robin.
Problems, I'll be quick. Mr. Councillors, thank you for the opportunity to address you. I'm the president of the Hunters Hill Croquet Club, and I would like to speak on the Fig Tree Park redevelopment. We've been engaged with Hunters Hill Council for many months since this park was earmarked for a grant. As the club's future was involved, we watched with great interest as the council engaged with the community through electronic means, on message boards in the park, the council staff available for consultation, allowing anyone in the community to have their say. A citizens panel canvassed a cross-section of the Hunters Hill community who heard a range of views, and this resulted in a strong consensus that croquet should stay and be incorporated in the park. This appealing design, which we've seen, which I think has been tabled and we're all railed through, has been informed by these community consultations and addresses all the recommendations. The design achieves good integration of the croquet activities into the park through new landscaping, sightlines, which enhance the park as a whole. Replacement of the existing wire fence with picket fencing will be more attractive, functional, and make croquet a real part of Fig Tree Park. Safety in Matthew Street will be greatly improved in the new design, which includes a footpath and improved entrance to the park. We think the council has addressed everyone's needs using the mature trees to create the play area is inspirational. The amenities block a necessity. Having safe access to Gladesville Road is a boon for local businesses and those using the park. Having adequate seating around the park is essential, and we hope that recycled materials can be used. The club has always envisaged an inclusive multi-use park accommodating a wide range of Huntersville community. As part of that community, we are happy to say that we feel we have been listened to and heard. We are keen to be included in any further consultation as the project progresses and any issues arise, which I'm sure they will. Also importantly, the Croquet Club has been retained as the community wanted and thereby preserves a major social and recreational hub for a significant section of Huntersville residents. The park becomes a community meeting hub and that the Croquet Club will remain an integral part of that community focus for some time. Congratulations to Huntersville Council, staff and Acting General Manager for a job well done. And we'd like to invite you all to come and play at our open day this Saturday. Some of you have already been there and had a go. And we believe the community consultation has been comprehensive. And we now urge Council to accept this new design, and we look forward to the works commencing in the near.
Thank you, Robin. Councillors, is there any questions? No, thank you. Councillors, move recommendation. Councillor Williams, seconded. Councillor Crassoy. Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I think the outcome is good. It does respect the fit for purpose aspect of the park, which was very important to maintain. It is a tranquil location for people to reflect, and equally importantly to have some activity with the croquet being better integrated into the park itself. So I think this is a great outcome and a win-win for the community. I look forward to seeing it be realised. The only issue which I've raised before is the location of the amenities block right alongside somebody's living room or bedroom. Maybe a better re-siding of that might be considered, but having considered all the merits of it, I think it is a great outcome, not only for our community, but also for the Croquet Club.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillors, any speakers against? For? I'll speak for. This has been a long-run process, and as has been pointed out, was a very detailed public consultation with the broader community that use that park. I've lived 150 metres from that park for some 25 years, and its use could be expanded and will be expanded by this project. Its accessibility to the village itself and to the businesses in the village, and to what council and government uses there are on the adjoining site particularly, will make this a very significant project for Huntersville, probably our most significant of this term. I'd like to thank the state government and Minister Stokes for granting us the funding for this project. It is anticipated under this timeline that we will potentially have this park, up and running within 12 or 18 months. So it's going to be a fantastic project. Any other speakers for? Against? I'll put the motion unless you want to write a reply, Councillor.
No, thanks.
No. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? That is unanimous. Councillor Crassoy, I can ask you to take the chair for item 4.3.
So item 4.3 is the plan of management for Crown Reserves, Park and Natural Areas. Is there a mover? Councillor Sanderson.
Recommendation with an amendment. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Some of the comment yes, I have. Yes, I did notice some significant drafting errors, so I'd like to insert point 1 in the in front of the recommendation, but otherwise the recommendation is the same. That 1, the draft plan of management ground reserves park and natural areas be checked for remaining errors, including that in clause 1.3 be corrected to recognise A, that the area of the municipality of Hunters Hill is approximately 570 hectares or 5.7 square kilometres. B, that the local government area or the municipality, not the council, that includes the suburbs listed. And C, that when referring to the council or the municipality of Hunters Hill is spelled with an apostrophe, but when referring to the suburb of Hunters Hill, Hunters Cove or Hunters Point, these place names are spelled without apostrophes.
There a seconder? Councillor Williams.
Yes, if I can speak to the motion. I know people say I'm a stickler on these sort of things, but this is an error that's been repeated over and over and over with all the plans of management. And I think these details need to be checked off. So I think all of our, if we do adopt any other plans of management this evening, that we do include that kind of final check. That's one particular one that I noticed. But otherwise, I'm very happy to move this motion. We'll move the plan amendment, not perfect, but I think under the circumstances it's acceptable to go. And I will leave it at that for now.
Speakers against? Paul?
Oh, sorry.
We'll put the motion then.
Mhm.
The second was Councillor Williams.
Thank you.
We'll put the motion then. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously.
Thank you, Councillor Cresswell. I'll move on to the plan of management for Henley Precinct Open Space. We have a couple of speakers for this item. I will invite Dr. Alistair Sharp.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There were so many pages of the business paper tonight. I really haven't found time to spend very much time on this one. So I'm only going to comment on one particular thing that jumped out at me. And that's the proposal to move the play equipment away from the playing field and move it down the hill to the old bowling green where it would be quite separate from the playing field. And I oppose this because as at Baronia Park, the play space functions as an auxiliary to the playing field. And what I see, I don't know Gladesville Reserve very well, but what I see at Baronia Park is that the younger kids play on the playing field while the older ones are doing their sport. And sometimes there are older kids playing on the playing field while the adults are playing sport. So the playing field should be seen as an adjunct to the play space for children should be seen as an adjunct to the sporting field and should not be moved. I don't mind if it gets moved a little bit, but it shouldn't be moved out of sight because the parents need to be able to keep an eye on things happening. So my only other comment applies to many of the items tonight, that we were given only a couple of days to read 600 odd pages, and I'm sad that I haven't had time to do due diligence to that tonight. I really hope that whether it means having more meetings or whether it means issuing the documents earlier beforehand, it's really not acceptable to expect people to assimilate 600 pages or whatever it is, 600 pages of detailed stuff in just a couple of days.
Thank you, Dr. Sharp. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Craswell.
Just off Dr. Sharp to you, through you, Mr. Mayor, actually. So unless anyone has any more questions for Dr. Sharp.
I'll just say, it's not a question, it's a comment to that last statement you just made. I couldn't agree more, Dr. Sharp, that we need to be able to access these tomes to give them due consideration of time. Thanks for that comment.
If I may add a comment to that. Until a couple of years ago, our business papers were text, and it was possible with a big, thick, concentrated document to search for words, to dash through it and search forwards and backwards and find. These last couple of years, these papers have been images, which means that they're quite opaque for analysis. And I'm really hoping that we could go back to issuing them as text. It's even worse when you get to the dressy documents that are put there, where half a page might be, or a whole page might be occupied by block photographs, illustrations, which are not relevant when you're doing an intensive analysis of it.
Dr. we can search these. You can do control F.
Councillor Councillor Begara, sorry.
They are searchable as images.
I hope that information could be circulated. I wasn't able to find that.
Control F.
Any other questions of Dr. Sharp? Councillor Williams.
Dr. Sharp, would you think it'd be advantageous to your ability to digest this if the council opened up its secret briefings where these items are brought to the councillors? But councillors have had this information previously, but the community hasn't. Do you think there would be advantage in making the process more transparent for the community to access these documents?
Of course, I didn't know there were secret briefings. I thought we were
nor did we, Dr. Sharp.
So, yes, I think that the community should have access to the documents as soon as the councils do. I thought that you were also limited to.
That is correct, Dr. Sharp. We received the business papers the same day they're put on the website.
Yes,
so you have briefings
before.
We have briefings on specific issues, as council's always done.
Well, then there's no way I would want to be a councillor in this council if I had that sort of intensity of work.
Yes.
I couldn't do that.
That's why we're here. Councillor Craswell, thank you, Dr. Sharp. Councillor Craswell, you had a question?
Thank you. Firstly, have there been some secret meetings that I'm not aware of?
There has not.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Secondly, just off the back of the comment about the playground, because I did go to one of the first consultation stakeholder meetings, or actually, I think the only large one. And at that, we talked about bumping the playground a bit west of the playing field so that it's more central to the basketball courts and the playing field. And on the map that I'm looking at, that's where the playground seems to still be roughly located, near the toilets. Or am I looking at an old section because I'm scrolling?
Stuart, if you could,
I'll Ms. Butler just to respond.
I agree with you.
Sorry, I'm not sure what.
Just in the placement of the playground space roughly is not down on the Henley Green.
The plan of management talks about looking at a new location for it, but it doesn't make a definite recommendation that it's here or here. It talks about two sites, one of them down on the old bowling greens and one a bit further in the park. But the decision is to be at a later stage.
Okay, so the plan of management's flexible.
Yes.
Thank you. That's I just wanted to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mrs. Simone Concha. Well, we'll sub you in. May as well.
Thank you. This goes to that discussion you just had. The question arises as to which part of the area is classified as what. Because the sports ground definition describes a level playing field area of Bayswater Reserve, but the diagram in figure 2.2 includes significant area that is not the level playing field traditionally used for marked up sports. So figure 2.2 shows sports ground effectively everything east of the skate park, including the current siting of the amenities block, the playground that we're just talking about, all the way across to Huntley's Point Road. which includes large tracts of a non-level playing field and areas with significant trees. So I guess our concern is whether that's an accurate classification for all of that space, or whether some of it should be otherwise categorised as park or some other classification. And also noting that the sports ground definition itself should be edited to include recreational, passive and informal uses, not just level playing field. That's our comment on that. And just in terms of the searchable documents, a lot of the PDFs are searchable, but not all the PDFs are. Some of them are images that you can't search. And I take Dr. Sharp's point. I think if it makes it easy for everyone, if everything is searchable, and I don't think there's any reason for the PDFs not to be made.
I might get started looking into that.
Yeah.
Hey, Councillor,
So those three words you just used, recreational, the other uses.
Passive and informal uses, I believe,
Thanks.
is derived from.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Prieston?
I think, and this is testing my law school memory, but I'm pretty sure that act references, I'm trying to find it, but I might have to take it on notice, references other considerations encapsulated by the use of a sports ground to mean the ancillary facilities that go towards enabling the use of the sports ground. For example, toilet blocks, but I'm not sure about the
Yeah, so my understanding is there are overlap between the different terms, so that I can't remember what the term is, but it's park or something, which means you still can have formal sport, and sports ground can also have ancillary, but I'm not sure whether it encompasses a playground, which might be different from an amenities block, for example.
Perhaps.
So we want to make sure that that's not excluded, and so existing facilities are not excluded through this extension of the sports ground definition, and also that the sports ground definition doesn't mean that area has to be a level playing field and therefore eradicate trees and things without appropriate.
Yeah, I can't speak to the level.
So I think the more general terminology of park or whatever it is would be more appropriate for much of it.
Councillors, any other questions to Paul? Councillor Sanderson?
It's so one of the things you're saying is that you're not satisfied with the area that's been allocated or categorised or proposed to be categorised as sports.
That's correct.
Ground on the basis that it includes quite a number of trees, for instance, on the northern side.
Well, on the basis that the definition
area up the top.
On the basis that the definition is sports ground is a level playing field, and the demarked or the marked area or designated area of sports ground includes large areas that are not level playing fields and not used for any traditional level playing field activities.
Councillors, any other questions? Councillor Cresswell?
Again, actually, through you, Mr. Mayor. So, yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Councillor Cresswell.
Thank you. I'm just madly scrolling and it's a little tricky. So through you, Mr. Mayor, I know that in the NESROC strategic sporting strategy plan, if something's defined as a sports ground, that means its primary use is for sport, but that doesn't mean that it can't have trees or playgrounds or playing fields on it. It just means the primary use is sport. Is that correct?
Defer to Stuart on that.
Mr. Mayor, I'd have to probably take that one on notice, but Susan, Ms. Butler might be able to address the area around the actual zone or classification.
The plans of management, the definitions are given on, I've got an old version around page 52, section 9.1, and the definition of a sports ground is land that's used or proposed to be used primarily for active recreation, and a park is land that's landscaped and it's the provision of non-sporting. So it's that difference between if it's organised sport and not organised recreational activities.
So used primarily for active recreation.
Active sport.
Active sport. Yeah. Used primarily for active sport.
Active recreation involving organised
sport. Yeah. So that doesn't mean
that.
So that doesn't mean that everything that's in pink is levelled.
No. So it's the playing field and the curtilage around it that's part of the area that's.
Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. We have a motion before us.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, councillor Williams.
Follow up on your comment that there haven't been secret meetings. I was just wondering, could you clarify whether or not we've had briefings on this issue?
On this plan of management. Yes, we've had briefings on it, not a secret meeting.
Well, has it been public?
It's been for the information of councillors to consider in open council, as we are doing.
Well, that's the definition of secrecy, isn't it? The exclusion of others. But anyway.
No, a secret meeting's a meeting that no one knows about.
Well, no one knew about these.
We all did.
But the community's not involved.
Well, we are, as the representatives of the community, we are involved, and I think that
Anyway,
being well briefed on an issue, councillor, we are briefed on these issues so that we can consider them with all of the information at hand, and that is been the normal process of this council for my 9 years, and it is the normal process of every other council in New South Wales, as far as I know.
Yeah, it lacks transparency, Mr. Mayor. I've got a few other questions in relation to the plan of management through you to
Councillor Williams.
Acting General Manager. Where it makes reference in the document to gain, does that relate to the opportunity for organisations like the Bridge Club to have a lease? Because there's nowhere that I can see in here there's any reference to organisations like the Bridge Club. Is that reference to game, meaning Bridge is a game and so therefore they can have a lease? Because in the document I find it difficult to see where organisations like that would have a presence if game doesn't mean things like Bridge. So could we get a clarification on what that means?
I think that we might also ask the question. There was a piece of correspondence from the Happy Hens who had a similar leasing issue. There is a section on leasing, but I just want to make sure that all of those organisations that are existing can enter into lease arrangements if council is of a mind.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, they can, but I might ask Susan just to clarify that where it sits in the plans of management.
The Bridge Club, for example, under
Page 273, councillors.
Yeah, Bridge could be considered a recreational purpose. So recreational purpose is something for which a lease could be granted under general community use. They might even argue, Bridge members, that it's a cultural purpose as well. So it is covered in the broader terms under a purpose for which tenure may be granted for general community use.
So for the lease or short term, up to on the short term end of the spectrum, 5 years and up to 21 years. For an organisation like the Happy Hens, for example, I'm not saying that it is necessarily 21 years, but if they had made a application, would they fit that criteria to enter into a lease arrangement?
Or a licence.
Okay.
So, yeah, it could be a lease or a licence. So licences also cover those recreational purposes and educational purposes and social purposes. So Happy Hens could fit into those categories.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Yeah, the word could does worry me, but I think we could be a bit more explicit. In the document, it makes reference to potential impact on residents, the use of the Henley facility. Could I ask, because there's no documentation here, what is intended in terms of protection of those residents? Use of the old bowling club.
Well, that would come into the type of uses that they would be, and it could be parking, traffic noise, those sorts of things. So it would be then become a condition of the lease or the licence or the short-term licence or whatever. So it's covered that way under the conditions of hire or conditions of use, rather than in the plan of management. It's in the other process that those groups have to go through.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, there doesn't appear to be any reference in the plan of management to functions being held at that location. If I misunderstood that?
No, I read that somewhere.
No.
Yes, functions are included as a purpose under short-term licence.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay.
table 10.3 it is.
Okay, thank you for that. And I was just wondering, Mr. Mayor, through you, why there hasn't been, as we normally do, an analysis of the submissions. There's just a cursory thing that sort of points to an overview, but in past, council has normally provided a comment on each of the submissions and each of the elements within those submissions, and that seems to be lacking in this report. Is there a reason why that wasn't done?
Good. Lord Nick.
No, but I thought we've addressed the issues in the report we've put up and through the revision we've made to the plans of management. So I think we've tried to make sure that we built those comments into what we put back up to council. So I think we've crossed the T's and dotted the I's that way.
Councillors, any other questions? No. There's a motion before us on page 215. We've got to move for the motion. Moved Councillor Preston, seconded Councillor Vergara. Any debate? Councillor Preston? No. Any speakers for, against? Councillor Sanderson, against?
Yes. Mr. Mayor, I'll start by tabling documents I sent to the Acting General Manager at the 9th of March. These have gone through this document in detail. Pages that point out problems with it, or notes on the problems, amounts to 9 pages. And we've heard some of these things before. Now, my comments were on the earlier version, because I didn't receive this version until the same time as everyone else. In these notes, I changed the text colour to green, where my concern had been addressed. And that was only about 6 pages. So the 6 minor points that have been addressed out of the broad range of problems I see with this plan. As Mr. Marnie pointed out earlier, I believe the areas allocated to sport are far too extensive. They really need to be reviewed in terms of what we decide to allocate to sport, what flexibility we give it. And I think flexibility in terms of where we put the sporting fields and so on is important. But they, sports areas don't need to include areas that are currently significantly trees that I would hope will never be removed or won't be removed. There are plenty of other issues that are of great concern to me. When we went through the plan of management for the Boronia Park, which largely significantly had to do with the community or sports and community facility there, one of the issues I raised was alcohol licensing, prohibiting gambling. We dealt with it quite tightly. I believe those provisions need to come into this plan of management, because I can see little problem, or I see little difference between the sports and community facility, or the proposed sports and community facility Boronia Park, and the Henley community centre and their potential uses. The other thing, which is quite outstanding to me, if you go through the plan of management, it clumsily attempts to deal with park and sports ground under the same heading. Either they're separate or the same, even if you can overlap them, it needs to be restructured and dealt with in a far better way. Other concerns I include, just flicking through some of the notes I've got here, is that a lot of the language is wrong, and I hope that, if I was having tabled the documents, maybe these things may be included in corrections should the plan be adopted tonight. One of the things that I find very concerning in terms of values and roles, there doesn't seem to be a great mention of biodiversity and urban heat mitigation. They're matters that I think will address, or must be addressed, particularly in a facility that is going to include both sports grounds and more passive recreational use. Other opportunities, this, perhaps the use of electric charging in car parks for electric vehicles. The other thing that I find also deeply concerning, I see absolutely no reason for justifying leases in any of the parkland. I know we've mentioned leases in the plan of management that I moved to adopt earlier, being the one that picks up our 10 parks. Now, there is some reason for that, because we have beautiful old boat ships scattered along those foreshores. There will often be leasing arrangements that justifies the lease in, I presume it's naturally foreshore categorisation. But in other locations, I see absolutely no justification for leasing of or leasing being granted to anyone, particularly not of up to 21 years, in areas that would, by and large, be for passive recreation. I've made quite a lot of other points, and it sort of devalues what's important for community. It points to, it seems to repeat this, because I mean, the way the document has been produced, it's sort of copy and paste, and then you edit it a bit to have to suit the, whether it's sports ground, park, or alternatively some of the other categorisations. I note also that there are errors in the citing of the Local Government Act, where it's classified as 26G at every point, where in fact it is different sections of the Local Government Act that should be referred to in quite a number of places. These documents indicate where that occurs. Again, I think it undervalues the value of these parks. I mean, these are shared facilities. There are sports grounds, and there is passive recreation or ranges of recreational use that are not organised sport. And this has been one of the points that I've made from the time that I moved to amend the recommendation was before council back in April last year. And again, we don't seem to be recognising community values. On page 68, it was one instance, but this occurs in a number of times in the document. It says, not alienate the Henley Precinct open space unreasonably. I think a far kinder wording would be, and far more respectful of the community, is not significantly alienate the Henley Precinct open space. And then there are other things where it grudgingly sort of says changes have a component of community benefit. I think if we're going to have, or if we're going to implement things, they must have community benefit full stop, not just a component of community benefit. Community involves everyone. It is, and it should, that benefit shouldn't be dished out sparingly like that. If I can just get back to the leasing, we went to some trouble with the Baronia Park plan of management. I believe the proposal is that the rugby club will have a 21-year licence. And licensing is totally appropriate. The distinction between a lease and a licence is that a lease provides exclusive use, and none of these facilities should be exclusively used, as far as I can see. So I really believe that a lot of the material about leasing in this document needs to be removed. Given the extent of the errors and corrections I see there, I don't really believe that this document is ready for adoption. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor, any speakers for? Councillor Prieston.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. In light of Councillor Williams' comments earlier to say that we must ensure we are speaking factually in these meetings, there's purposes stipulated in the report for which leases and licenses can be granted, and they're exactly the same. Correct me if I'm wrong. Do it through, Mr. Mayor. I'm looking at page 56. They both say seasonal, one-off and irregular sporting competitions and training, management of sports field and court facilities. That's my first point. Second point is that you mentioned, Councillor Sanderson, that this kind of management would devalue what is important to community. I disagree, because from pages 59 to 63, there are, and it's very inclusive, pretty much I might not say that, most groups within our community in Hunters Hill would benefit from something in this very extensive table at 10.3. For instance, we have access and accessibility, so we can provide effective vehicular wayfinding. Secondly, we can establish a framework for the use of the community centre, building and greens that addresses a need in the LGA. I could go on, childcare centre, etc., etc. So I do think that the needs of the community are adequately addressed by this, just by virtue of the fact that a lot of things have been considered, and a lot of these things can go to different generations, interests and whatnot in the community. So I think it's diverse enough. I think it covers a lot off. I think this list of permitted leases, licenses and other estates at table 9.5 is also very broad. I think everyone at this table and everyone in the...
Councillor, please, don't interrupt.
And everyone watching tonight could agree that something in here would be of interest to them and would benefit them. So I don't think that your comment about devaluing what is important to community is accurate. I think this is valuable to the community. I think adopting this kind of management is essential to the development of our community. And I think this map, figure 2.2, which has the sports ground as actually not that big an area, and I might be wrong, but I don't think that our current sports ground is any less or more than that area. Maybe marginally, not sure, but that looks pretty roughly the same as what we currently have. So I don't see any issues with what's been proposed to us. It looks actually very thorough. And again, I think there's something for everyone in here. And since we stand for community, we should adopt this recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other speakers for or against? That can be taken as right a reply.
Can we just see the motion again, please?
Yes. Getting conscious of time here too, councillors. We've got a lot to get through. Okay, councillors. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? Carried. Move to item 4.5, Victory Park Plan of Management. We have a recommendation in front of us. A mover. Councillor Quinn, seconder. Councillor Crassoy. Councillor Quinn.
Look, Mr. Mayor, I think we've been through the details here of what's proposed at Victory Park. There are still some other checkpoints. I know there are some issues that might be of some concern, particularly mentions of what abuts Victory Park and possible future users of the cottage precinct along Gladesville Road. But there are still further checks and balances and decision moments for this council regarding that whole area in the future. So I'm okay with this.
Thank you, councillor. Any other discussion? If not, Councillor Williams.
Yeah, now I'll speak against it, Mr. Mayor, on the basis that there is this competing proposals within the plan of management. One is the Victory Park itself, and the other is the strip of cottages along Ladesville Road. And it refers to a stage 2, but doesn't tell us what the stage 2 is. It then goes on to the latter part of the document to talk about future or something or other, wherever I can find it here somewhere. Yeah, future uses, potential future uses. I think that has no place in a plan of management. That should be factual about what we're doing, and there should be clarity about what we expect out of that plan. To put in section 8 in this plan of management, I think it maybe use the term that they use, the plan of management, but it, to me, is setting up a situation that hasn't been agreed on, may never be agreed on. And if you take the response of the community in relation to the CIP, the Community Infrastructure Plan, should never be considered. And I just think that whole section 8 should be removed, and we should deal with the facts and the issues that council has before it on the table and how it manages it. I also have concern about the plan on page 79 or 428, where it highlights the Victory Park, it highlights the general community use, but it leaves out of the Green Park the cottage that is proposed to be removed and incorporated into the park. So why wouldn't we, in the plan of management, be acknowledging that decision so that we don't have to come back later on and add that into the plan of management, because we've already made that decision. So to me, there's 2 key elements that need to be considered. There's a whole range of other things which I won't, considering the time, won't go into, but the important ones to me is the deletion of 8, because it doesn't have any factual basis, and we should only have things in our plans that we know of and will commit to. And secondly, I think there's a major error in not including that cottage in the green on that map to represent its new role in our park. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Mayor.
councillor. Any other speakers?
Could I make an amendment?
If you so like. Councillor
That
Sanderson.
the adoption takes place. I would like to add that section 8 of the plan management be completely removed.
I'll second that.
Seconded. Councillor Williams. Did you want to speak to that, or
Yes,
Councillor Quinn? You got a question?
Yeah, I've just got a question. Perhaps it's to the author of the
Susan.
plan of management.
Sorry.
Sorry, who wrote this one?
I'm the author of the report.
Oh, the report, yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. If you could clarify for us, what are the implications of removing all of section 8? As has been proposed in this amendment.
It's from page 73.
Yeah.
So that's, we're talking there four pages.
Possibly the acting general manager might be better.
Yes, Mr. Tobin.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm just looking at it now. It's all about future uses. All future uses are subject to consultation with the community. Look, be quite honest, I'm comfortable if it comes out, because we're still going to have to produce new documents and new plans of management for anything we do. If it's outside of what's approved. So we're not approving, section 8's not approving anything, it was just giving a bit of an indication of what could be happening. But correct me if I'm wrong though, Susan, if I get this wrong, but my understanding is that we're not approving those uses, it was just highlighting them. And I have no issues pulling back on that, knowing that we've got uses approved on both the park and just got to remember that we're only dealing with Crown land under these Crown land plans of management, hence why 48 is not included. It's actually council owned outright, and then therefore it's not able to be included under the plan of management. And it's something that we're still working through DAs and things to get approved. But unless you tell me I'm got it wrong, Susan, I've got no real issue removing 8.
Just Section 8 was developed in consultation with Crown Lands. So it was the consultants preparing this and talking to the previous general manager and Crown Lands about what the implications would be. And so this document here, that Section 8, has had the Crown Lands as the owners of the land having input into that.
Thank you. Councillor Williams, Councillor Sanderson, sorry.
Yes, I'm speaking to the amendment. Look, I've got, like with Councillor Williams, I have major problems with Section 8. I don't really believe it belongs in a plan of management, particularly in view of the fact that if you go to page 75 of the plan of management, page 424 of the business paper, there's a string of points there. Number 4, it talks about the council-owned adjacent land at 48 Gladesville Road could contribute to proposal either as seniors living or over 55s and so on. So there what you're doing is proposing a future development, which in the motion or the earlier resolution of council to create this park, that is a vital part. So there is no place for that to be in a plan of management, being flagged as something for future development, even if that future development only involves using the area of that land to justify a greater floor space ratio or come into the floor space ratio for any proposed development in the future. It's just totally inappropriate. It doesn't belong in a plan of management where that land is not currently part of the plan of management. My hope would be that ultimately, after we get through all of this process, that when the park is done, that area of 48 Gladesville Road will be reclassified and then recategorised to become park. That is what it should become. And until it does so, I think it's improper for a plan of management to foreshadow it as being a tool for future development or of development to be used in a way that it will effectively allow greater density of development and any future development in that strip of land on Gladesville Road.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other speakers for the amendment? No. I will therefore put the amendment. Those in favour of the amendment, those against, that is lost. If there are any more speakers to the original motion, Councillor Crassoy. I might just ask Councillor Crassoy if you are happy to move an extension of the meeting time to 9:30 as well. Seconded Councillor Quinn. All those in favour, against, that's carried. Councillor Crassoy.
Just a comment, actually, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the report to the council staff and general manager. Some time ago, we asked for reference to a village green to be removed from all communication about the Fig Tree Park area, and it comes up a lot throughout this plan of management. Now, it was I can't remember when, but it was definitely part of a motion. I think Dr. Sharp spoke at that meeting, and at the time we established that the term village green has never been applied to that area. It just kind of came up in some of, I think, the old property strategy. So we actually had a resolution of council that said to remove all reference to the term the village green. I'm sure that can be just peppered out.
I think that we can do that just as a matter of course.
Yeah.
If councillors are comfortable. Yeah. Right of reply, councillor? No. Speaking against?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Again, I think Councillor Cresswell's addition to the other area or other amendments that are required justifies my concern that I don't believe I can support this particular plan of management. I would, however, I mean, a lot of the problems with this are common to the problems I spoke of in the Henley Precinct plan of management. I'd make the point, and which Councillor Preston tried to counter a point in favour of those plans of management, that being that they allow plenty of uses. A lot of the time, that is the problem. The uses that are proposed are far too broad. They need to be narrowed because some of the activity in some of these plans of management is not appropriate in those areas. So, again, I simply cannot support this. It's disappointing to see so much work put into something and not get a far better outcome than I think this community deserves.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other speakers? Councillor Quinn.
Mr. Mayor, look, I'll just simply say that I think there are enough other checks and balances at other times when, you know, other possible uses will have to come back for further consideration. So, you know, that's why I'm okay with this. I understand what Councillor Sanderson is saying, but I'm also mindful that you don't want to hamstring yourself so much that you can't do anything in a community facility. So those other things that might be of concern, they will have to come back for further consideration at another time.
Councillors, any other discussion? Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll just take up that point that was just raised then. That's the trouble that we find ourselves in time and time again, is not being explicit and clear about what our intent is. We just leave it to another process, another time. For me, there is a time now to be clear that this is the plan of management for today. This is where we want it to be today. Now, if we go through other processes later on, legitimate processes, then we can make modifications and amend. We'll have to amend that house that we own at some stage. So we can do other
order, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Crassoy.
Can I just clarify, was Councillor Quinn moved the motion?
I believe it was Councillor Quinn, yes, seconded
And
by yourself.
Councillor Williams has already spoken against the motion.
No, I spoke to the amendment.
Spoke to the amendment.
Oh, you proposed an amendment. Sorry, thank you for the clarification. Thank you.
Was that right of reply, was it?
Councillor Quinn spoke.
Well, I don't think
I don't think Councillor Quinn hadn't spoken to the original point, unfortunately. So could have been taken as right of reply,
Anyway,
but
cut a long story short,
Councillor Williams.
my point still prevails in my mind that we need to deal with what we're dealing with to give community clarity. Other processes will take place. We've been through part of that process with the community infrastructure plan, and the community showed a very clear opinion about what's being done. So there is a long process to go through, and I don't think it's relevant to have within the plan of management that's going to operate it as of today.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Quinn, would you like a right of reply?
Look, I'm okay to go to the vote.
Thank you. Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Just conscious, sorry, could I just check you in the back? Are you here for a particular item?
The Huddersfield
Bridge Club. I might ask councillors if we could move that motion forward. Councillor Williams, Councillor Quinn. We probably should have done that a little while ago, but all those in favour? Yes, that's carried. The Huddersfield Bridge Club, item 4.7. Licence renewal. Have I got a mover? Move the recommendation. Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Quinn. Any discussion? No. All those in favour? Against? Carried.
Can I say on behalf of the Huddersfield Bridge Club that we really thank you, because you've now given us 18 months of security. We don't have 700 members. We do have 320 local members.
Thank you.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Enjoy the weekend.
Thank you.
Do it at 7:30.
It's been really good.
We'll move back.
We'll
move back to item 4.6, land at Crown Street, Henley. Councillors, there's a speaker to this motion, Dr. Alistair Sharp. Sharp, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. I was surprised to see this on a business paper that's so full of stuff that it's impossible to get through it all. I was wondering what the urgency is for including this one on the business paper. I don't think I can remember it ever being mentioned before. So I can only assume that some body has expressed interest in acquiring the land. From this community point of view, the only reason to consider a possible sale of the benefits of the community would be if the income would generate some particular use with the money gained from the sale. But that hasn't been identified. There seems to be no driving force for making this subdividing and disposing or considering to dispose of this land. So I think that the proper thing to do is to defer this item until there is some justification for it.
Councillors, we've got a question.
It's a comment, the same as what I said last time, Dr. Sharp. I couldn't agree with you more. This has been a surprise to me. First I saw it was in the business paper. The big missing piece is the consultation. So thank you for your comments, and we'll see where we go from here.
Councillor Williams.
I just want to move the motion.
Okay, I would make a quick clarification that the recommendation is to reclassify the land. It's not a recommendation to dispose of the land. That would be a subsequent consideration of council. So this is purely a reclassification.
Yes, I understand that, but you don't reclassify unless you want to do something with that.
Councillor Williams, you have, sorry, any more questions? No?
Thank you.
Councillor Williams?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I agree also with Dr. Sharp. This is the first time I've seen it, but my motion would be commence subdivision of the land known as 1A Crown Street, Henley, for the purposes of creating a park or having it categorised as a park.
I've got a seconder. Councillor Sanderson, speak to the motion.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I was again shocked, dismayed to see this item come up before council, because we've spoken on many occasions that, and again, I refer back to the community infrastructure plan, that we need to have a policy if we're going to move down the path of disposal. And the only reason this motion is on the paper is for ultimate disposal of the land. And to me, that cannot take place under first, we have a policy in relation to disposal of community land, and that we acknowledge, there's nothing in this report that acknowledge the benefits of this land. It provides a connection between the Henley Precinct and the Gladesville Hospital. Until we know what happens at the Gladesville Hospital, it's going to be very difficult to know or to be able to say that this is not a value as a park and a way to make those connections. And in doing so, it does create a biodiversity connection, a linkage from the Henley Precinct into the Gladesville Hospital. So I think it's premature to be talking about options for sale and maximising this land and whatever, because we haven't done some of the fundamental work to get to that point. I think it is relevant to subdivide it away from the cottage to allow us to move forward to recategorise it as a park for those purposes that I mentioned. So I'm confused as to who would benefit from going down the path of disposing of this without the necessary checks and balances in place.
Thank you, Councillor. Any speakers against? Councillor Prieston?
Oh, yeah.
The amendment? The amended motion, I should say, the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, I'm reading here. A full valuation exercise has not been undertaken yet, but is expected to exceed $6 million after costs of subdivision. The cost of subdivision being around $10,000 estimated. it's clear that the benefit of subdividing and then potentially disposing of the land, we're not deciding on the disposal of the land in this meeting, we're deciding on the subdivision. And I think it would be premature to accept this amendment to the motion for the reasons that you pointed out in your motion yourself, is that to determine what we do with the land after we subdivide it is premature. So I agree with you on that point. The benefit is clearly to the council. It says the strategic outcome is that the council is financially sustainable, and $6 million is quite a sum for a piece of land that is currently not being used by the HLDC. So I reject the amendment to the motion on the grounds predominantly that it's premature to be determining what we do with the land post subdivision, and secondly because I reject the suggestion that there is no obvious benefit to anyone by subdividing this land.
Thank you, Councillor. Any speakers for?
No, Mr. Mayor, I'm not speaking for it. I'm going to foreshadow a motion that this matter be deferred for further consideration and workshop discussion by councillors.
Thank you, Councillor. That is deferred and will become the motion if this motion is lost. Any speakers?
I'll withdraw my motion and deferral to that one.
That now becomes the motion. Is there a seconder? Councillor Crassoy, Councillor Quinn.
Right, I will speak to this one, Mr. Mayor. I am gobsmacked that this has come to councillors without any previous discussion, conversation. And I'd say that's similar to a motion we had put to councillors at the last meeting for the sale of a parcel of land in Lloyd Street, for memory, is what it was. Where's the informing about what's coming? This has come out of the blue, I think, for all of us around this table. And if we're going to support this, we need to have some understanding of the detail of why we're doing this. Now, I get the reason for this is trying to get more revenue for council. I understand that. But to have this come to us tonight for a decision to start that process straight away, I just do not think is appropriate. We need to be able to discuss this. We need to finalise our strategy in terms of the remnant lands policy and make a decision about, yes, we might put that one up for sale. No, we're not going to put that one up for sale, whatever it might be. But to have it come to us like this tonight, I just can't accept that. We need to have a lot more conversation about this moving forward.
Thank you, Councillor. Any speakers against? Councillor Vergara.
Yeah, I just want to foreshadow a further amendment, and perhaps it's to delete number 0.2, and in number 0.3, delete the words and reclassification, so that we subdivide, and upon completion of the subdivision, a report provided for use and options, and then you consider reclassification, because at the very least, the land has to be subdivided from the current lot for anything to happen. So we shouldn't totally throw out the baby with the bathwater. That risks opportunities being lost, even opportunities you might want, as time moves on. So you could get a new owner in there tomorrow. Things can happen. It doesn't make sense to not realise the opportunity to subdivide this land now. So that's.
Your foreshadow.
I agree that.
Or are you making a suggested amendment?
If that motion was a suggested amendment to this motion.
This is the motion, so you could just offer an amendment.
So that's the amendment. That would be number 0.1, delete number 0.2, and delete the words and reclassification from number 0.3.
Councillor Quinn.
Mr. Mayor, I'd suggest that while I understand what Councillor Vergara is saying, that's a substantially different motion. So I'd suggest it does need to be a foreshadow.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Yep. Councillors, any other speakers? Yes, Councillor Williams.
Speaking to Councillor Quinn's motion. Yeah, I go back to the starting point of my original address, is that council should have and must have a policy in place as to how it deals with its remnant lands, etc. And council's agreed to do that. So before we do anything in terms of this site, I think it's proper that we as a council understand the criteria for which we would change ownership or use. We've seen in the past council sold off a shopping centre area, and that $9 million is still sitting in the bank account some 20 years later. So just making a quick windfall on a property doesn't necessarily mean an outcome for council. And I would suggest that we need to have a very clear statement on the use of any monies that would come from that. But we can't even get there until we have a policy in place that allows us to measure the merits or otherwise of a proposal.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other speakers? Councillor Crassoy.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, where is the remnant lands policy at? Where is this thing that we've
It will have to be brought back to council.
Pardon?
It will have to be brought back to council. Didn't fit in this agenda. I thought there was enough in there for us to be getting on with, and probably is, because we're probably not going to be able to finish this agenda tonight. But yes, that will have to be brought back to and considered by council, potentially at the next meeting. We'll see.
Mr. Mayor, can I just ask a question in relation to the timing of the meeting? It was my understanding that we need an extension from 9:30 to 10 o'clock, not from 9.
I believe it was 9 till 9:30.
Could the General Manager, Acting General Manager, clarify that?
Acting General Manager.
I haven't got code of meeting practice in front of me, councillors. If you give me a couple of minutes.
If you could check that while we finish this debate. Yeah. Councillor Quinn, right of reply.
Yeah, look, Mr. Mayor, I'll simply say that, and I'll put it out there, I am not against ultimately what this as one of the options for that site. So I wouldn't want to lock it into any particular use right now, but I just think we need to have the conversation. You know, it's going to light a fire in the community, I'd suggest, even if at this stage we go and put in a subdivision. Let's just have a conversation about it and come up with this strategy, and then we can move forward. But I wouldn't rule out this being a possibility.
Thank you, councillor. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? I'll put that again. All those in favour of the motion? Against? That's carried. Councillors, I might suggest, is there any items that you particularly want to speak on in the raft from the number 4.8 through to 4.16? If you could identify them, we might ask for a motion to deal with them as a block.
I'll move the superannuation one, 4.9. I think
we want to deal with items 4.7, 4.8, 4.10, 4.11.
We've done 7.
We've done 7.
Yep. Yes, we have. Sorry, 4.8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 and 16.
I'll be happy to move that one.
Moved Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Crassoy. Any debate? All those in favour? Against? That is carried unanimously. Item 4.9, Mayor and Councillor fees and superannuation.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move that the current rates be maintained and that we do not proceed to introduce super.
I'll second that motion. Councillor Williams.
I'll foreshadow a motion, Mr. Mayor, that we do consider the super within the current framework, because there is advantages in having pre-tax contributions to superannuation. So if it can be considered within the current total remuneration, that's what I'll foreshadow.
Hello, Councillor Williams, to speak to the motion.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I think council fees are quite appropriate at the moment. I see no real influence or no real underpinning or supporting of council business by entering into a super arrangement. For example, this term is 2 years, 2.5 years. If anybody is only on it for the 2.5 years, the amount of super is meaningless, unless you're a career politician. Having super while you're a part-time councillor, I think is a little bit over the top. So I think we can save the $20,000 and just have the status quo maintained.
It's appreciated, Councillor Williams. Any other speakers? Councillor Vergara.
Just in favour. It just doesn't fit with the do I have to stand?
Yes.
It's a bit like
Ideally.
the stipend we get, it's not a PAYG, it's not income, we're not classified as employees. I feel like it's a bit arbitrary and clashes with the actual way we're engaged and the service we provide.
I will, sorry, Councillor Quinn.
I just want to be clear to everybody that I'm not saying the total cost to council goes up.
Yes.
But in my foreshadow that there is an option that the super could be a pre-tax contribution. At the moment, it'll have to be a post-tax contribution and it's taxed at higher rates.
My understanding, Councillor Quinn, is that you can make a voluntary contribution from your councillor allowance to your superannuation.
Pre-tax.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's correct, councillors.
What's that? Sorry.
I think that is correct.
Right. Okay, that's good to know.
The specific problem I have, which Councillor Vergara touched on, and if they're applying super to the fees that we're given, then it needs to be taxed on as a wage, which it isn't at the moment. We don't get PAYG, so we're up for the full, your respective full nominal tax rates is applied to the fees. So we're not deemed employees. It's an unusual system that needs to be fixed anyway, but I think it's an unusual thing that we're not issued PAYG on the fees, but then we are now eligible to make super contributions that are involuntary super or via council. Anyway, that's my hot take on it. Councillors, any other discussion? All those in favour of the motion? Against? That is carried.
Mr. Mayor, would you like some clarification on the time?
Yes, if you could.
How many items you got left?
We got the items in confidential items.
Okay. No, look, I'll be honest then. You've got, as long as you extend before 9:30, you can extend to 10.
Okay.
But the quicker is better, isn't
So
it?
move, Mr. Mayor, that we extend till 10.
Thank you, Councillor Quinn. Seconded, Councillor Williams. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Could I have a motion to move into Committee of the Whole? Councillor Crasloy, seconded Councillor Sanderson. We'll just take them. All those in favour?